So now we're going.
We're live. This is live.
Yeah, we are live.
People can see us now.
We should now be out on the interwebs, on my Twitch channel. People should be getting their...
This is the Carcillaverse. In 5, 4, 3...
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a very special live edition of Geeks Who Like Sports. It's episode 106. As always, I am Ray Carcillo in beautiful Los Angeles, California. Joined by best for the entire world over in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Lee Elias. Lee, how you doing today, buddy?
Buddy, I'm loving it. I'm loving the live shows. It's sunny and beautiful here in Philadelphia. It's 60-something degrees. I was writing outside before we started here. The creative juices were running. I texted you. I'm like, hey, buddy, you ready to go? And you were like, I was just waking up. Need shower, and then you got a shower and you're awesome now, and we're ready to go. It's not a shot at you. I'm excited. 106. We got actually a lot of great topics today. This is going to be like a fun episode to talk about. No shortage of really good topics today. Not a lot of negative stuff today. It's good.
Yeah, there's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Yeah, here. Cheers.
Cheers.
My mug is in the dishwasher.
That's okay.
So it's a Star Wars mug right now, but yes, Geeks Who Like Sports mugs. Maybe we'll add those to the store at some point. But that's the big first off, to kick things off. We promised it last week. It is now official. If you are part of the Facebook group, you can see the link. We have started selling Geeks Who Like Sports t-shirts. If you're watching the video of this, Lee,
you can see it right now. Look, I'll back up a little bit. There we go.
Lee is modeling it, and it looks really good. I'm really happy with how good they turned out. I cannot wait to get mine. Lee, of course, has the entire shipment. I'll be visiting Lee in the next few weeks where we do a special live in-person show.
Yeah, that'll be fun. We'll actually fight for real for a change.
Yes.
It'll be great. We'll get a sandwich afterwards. I like to do the Italian hoagie afterwards. Ray likes to do, I think, pastrami, which is kind of weird. But, hey, whatever floats your boat after a fight, man.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. It depends. Sometimes you just feel like, some pastrami's good.
Question of the day. First question for the audience. After you fight your best friend, what sandwich do you get? And where do you get it from?
Yeah, that is a good question.
I love live.
That is a good question. That is a great question.
That's a great question.
Frankly, for those of you who are in chat, if you want to know where the link is, again, you can go to the Geeks Who Like Sports Facebook page. It is also there in the Twitch chat for you. So thank you, everybody. And again, we're gonna try and more organically work in the chat this week. It's a new thing for us. We're doing this live. For those of you who are listening to the podcast after the fact, of course, we absolutely love that you guys are still listening to us whenever you listen to us. But we are definitely trying to figure out how to do this live, but still keep our podcast roots going. And like Lee said, we had a huge show for you today. This is a great show to test it out on. We've got Mortal Kombat. We've got Witcher. We've got Cobra Kai. We've got Thor 4. We've got Falcon. A lot of sports stuff. Yeah, we got baseball, football. We've got soccer today.
Full show. It's a good show. I'm excited about it. Like you said, a lot of good topics this week. The sports geek gods have really blessed us once again. I remember when Ray and I started this show, there was a moment where what if there's not enough to talk about each week? And 106 weeks in a row, we've never not had something to talk about. So that's pretty good. Looks like we found a niche, Ray.
Yeah, I think we're in a good spot, buddy, for sure. And again, so we got a lot to talk about. Just want to also quickly, since Lee put a question out to the chat, Landon Mark says he goes to Jersey Mike's or Subway, who we are both very open for either of those to sponsor Geeks Who Like Sports.
Absolutely. Talk about a hole-in-one. Little Happy Gilmore reference there. I can do that.
I actually go to a place called Philly's Best out here.
I know Philly's Best.
Cheesesteaks.
I actually know Philly's Best. When my wife was in the Air Force, we had one of those on base, and they were not half bad. I'm not gonna lie to you. That was pretty good. I enjoyed it. It just wasn't big enough. Like I never felt like the bread was big enough for my appetite, but it was good.
That's fair. I wonder if that's also though because you were in England. I wonder if there's because the ones out here in LA. I feel like they're pretty close. They're not 100%, but they are pretty close to what you get in Philly.
Well, in a few weeks, Ray, I'm going to give you a real one. So we'll have to come back on the show if you're listening. Come back and Ray will give a review of an actual cheesesteak from Philadelphia opposed to a Philly cheesesteak from a chain.
Yes, but again, we love Philly's Best as well. We will also take them as a sponsor.
Any day of the week.
Yes. But we're going to kick things off here, folks, with, of course, we're going to do geek stuff first. It is a huge week for geek stuff, especially because, and by the way, this is going to be spoilers. So those of you who are listening out there, we're talking, of course, about Falcon and the Winter Soldier. The finale happened last night. We are about 36 hours ago from when we're recording at this moment.
Right.
Spoiler
alert. If you haven't seen it yet somehow, spoiler
Yeah,
alert.
this is going to be a spoiler-filled episode. I think we're going to spoil some Mortal Kombat stuff. I think we're going to spoil some Captain and Falcon Winter Soldier stuff.
Yeah,
we're
one of
definitely
those matters.
Yes, we're definitely kicking things off with a Falcon and Winter Soldier spoiler alert. Caitlin's here; she can hear us. That's fantastic. But yeah, there's a lot of great stuff to talk about with this show. This was a perfect conclusion.
Absolutely.
To this season. I don't know if they're going to do a second season. We'll get into that in a second. But of course, the big thing is we saw Sam in his superhero reveal right off the bat. Looked amazing in the comic accurate suit, and you know what? He ended up finding a way to win without powers, without a super soldier serum. He did it on his own terms. He's got vibranium wings. It was a phenomenal. There was a great fight scene between him and Carly, him and Batroc. And in terms of the action, it hit all the right notes. And then it kind of tapered down, and it had a really important message there by the end. Lee, what were your thoughts on Falcon and the Winter Soldier finale? Now officially, we can say it. Captain America and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I thought it was phenomenal. Look, this is what I look for finales, and we've talked about this many times on the show, how hard it is to land the ship on any finale. And the way I rank that is, how do I feel when I leave, right? And it doesn't always mean you have to feel good. Now, this show left me feeling really good, motivated, inspired, dare I say it. Sometimes it's okay to leave, though, not feeling that way. For example, like how I felt after Infinity War, which is not a TV show. I was satisfied after that film. Like, it was a really dark ending, but like I walked away like, wow, I just experienced something, right? Didn't get that with WandaVision, did get it with The Mandalorian, and did get it with Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We talked about this on our stream yesterday at streamlounge.io. Go check out the replay there if you want to really full in-depth and watch the episode with us. But one of the things that I thought about this episode that was insanely important and a massive departure from some of the other things that Marvel has done is that this episode really relied on the writing and a speech that Sam gives, which we'll talk about, to kind of complete the episode. And they really, really nailed the whole series, diving into some pretty sensitive social issues facing the world and America, and approached it in the way that comic books do that so well, which yes. I don't think the MCU has really jumped into yet. I mean, we've had just great action films and some great comedies, and it's been a really fun ride. But this is the first show that really dared to go into that side, and man, they just hit the nail on the head. The messaging could be received by opposing sides of an issue and understood. It forced us to have conversations. Right, in our streams, we've had people comment that, wow, I never thought about it that way. I mean, how often do you hear that right now? Usually it's not. It's just, I'm right, you're wrong. I mean, right. It was changing people's perception. Yeah. So I thought that for that reason alone, this finale was excellent. There were some people that said it felt rushed, that some of the stuff was tied a little too quickly. And they're not wrong, but I don't think that was the point, to be honest with you. And I think that the previous 5 episodes set that up well, keeping in mind there'll be a future. But I am insanely impressed with the way Marvel has tackled both making a black Captain America and not glossing over that, not just giving Sam the shield and being like, hey, you're Captain America. Like, they really dove into the social side of that. And then also, I've said this before, is the minor side of it, not just letting the snap and the blip just go by, like, oh, it's no big deal that half the people just showed up again.
Ramifications from that.
Yeah, like that's well written. It's deep, and this is, I mean, if we're comparing it to WandaVision, which we shouldn't, I mean, this is the best Marvel show they've ever made.
Right. Yeah, no, they did a fantastic job. I mean, again, like you mentioned, a couple of things were tied up quickly. We, of course, confirmed Sharon was the power broker all along, which we had suspected for a long time.
Right.
What happens with Carly and the Flag Smashers gets tied up very, very neatly, courtesy of a car bomb from one Baron Zemo. There was some fun stuff there. They also left some doors open for other things. Obviously. The big thing, before I get onto some of the other stuff, obviously want to touch on, they brought Isaiah Bradley fully into the Marvel universe in this last episode in a really powerful way. Even I will admit, when I watched it the first time, I got a little choked up about what it meant to him to see Sam as Captain America. And it meant a lot. It's clearly a very powerful scene. I'm not gonna get that far into it because, especially if you haven't seen it, you should. Carl Lumbly is an absolute powerhouse in this. And I also glad they also shine a little bit more of a light on Eli, his grandson, which again only feeds my theory that he will be Patriot at some point for Young Avengers. But this was, and what it meant to him, I think, as well, to see this. And I think that. Because in theory, if this goes the way we think it's going to go, that's 3 generations of Black Captain Americas there in one scene, potentially. But then, I mean, it's a very powerful moment, and I think it was like you said, it's something that it found a way to explain some of today's most pressing issues with an even-handedness that even the most stubborn of individuals who are on either side for their cause could understand where others are coming from, and that basically this show says there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of gray area, and we need to operate uncomfortably in that gray area and work harder at being better to make the progress that we all deserve.
Right.
And I think that is a big takeaway from this overall.
Yeah, and none of it felt jammed down your throat. And I think that's typically the problem with anything politically, that sometimes people feel like they're, jamming something down your throat.
You get hit over the head with a theme.
Yeah, it was beautifully written by people that I don't think had an agenda outside of just making really good television that had a good message, right? And they didn't focus on what people on either side extremely would think. They focused on, this is what we believe, this is what Marvel, this is canon, to be honest with you, this is part of the comic books. Another thing that it opened up on the real world level is that, and I kind of applaud Marvel for not making this a problem, but Anthony Mackie has been speaking out lately, especially lately, about he felt very uncomfortable in the MCU for a long time about being a black superhero, and how he felt that African Americans and people of color were really being kind of pushed aside. In fact, he was commenting the other day about Black Panther, which famously had a obviously mostly a person of color cast, and behind the scenes a black director, and so forth and so on. And he had said that, why does it take the black movie to have a black staff? He goes, we need to do better than this. And I think that him being involved in this project and the way this was done, it was just beautiful. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, if you haven't seen it or you have seen it, you know what we're talking about. And I love that a geek property like Marvel is now the beacon of hope, pun intended, right, for this topic. It's done it better than any media service that I've seen. It's had more impact. And like with that, Sam's speech last night, Captain America's speech last night, was so on point. I mean, and it just so clearly explained the plights of several people in a way that you can consume it without feeling like it's MSNBC, Fox News, CNN, pick your poison with that one.
Yeah, or any kind of made-for-television special kind of thing.
Yeah, it's so well done. And it reminds me, going back to this, right? Bill Maher, right, who has had a really interesting political career on TV.
Right.
I remember a few years ago when Stan Lee died. Bill Maher's one of these guys, I agree with him sometimes and sometimes I don't. But one of the things he did that I really didn't like was when Stan Lee died, he kind of called out geek culture of like, get over it. It's not a big deal. Like, the guy wrote comic books. Like, he was just really demeaning to the geek community, which I thought was an a-hole move, which that's not something he's not accustomed to. But this proved him wrong, in my opinion. And I was waiting for a moment like this, and this was it. This shows that geek culture does have a place, and it's art in a lot of ways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He also actually bashed the video game crowd last night, which was fun to watch.
But that's talking about. But
well, he's an old man who's set in his ways, and so video games, comic books, these kinds of things. Look, it's not knocking old people, it's not ageism, right? But it tends to be that folks who did not grow up with these things tend to look at them with a more skeptical or keep him at a distance kind of eye. So, and he is a man now in his 60s, so it kind of makes sense that these are not his favorite things. But yeah, no, the show is great. I mean, also in terms of content, we got, for some folks who felt it was rushed, it is official now. Wyatt Russell's John Walker is U.S. agent, was made fully U.S. agent in this. He was kind of redeemed in this episode, right? And some folks feel he was redeemed a little bit too quickly. But I also understand, like you said, why they had to do that, what they're trying to set up, what they're trying to do, and to show how he came full circle. And again, to show that he's not a bad guy, right? This was another big thing about the show did in terms of military issues. He's a dude who has probably been dealing with some PTSD, and who was thrust into a limelight with a role that he might not have fully understood what it meant, or at least it meant something different to him than what it meant to a lot of others. And I think that a lot of that really, came through. But I think that he has an epiphany, and he comes to realize a lot of things. And I think that, and he ends up being redeemed in the end, of course, by Contessa Val. For those of you who don't know, she becomes Madam Hydra in the comics. But I believe, at least at this moment, we'll hopefully get more of her in Black Widow. Supposedly that is what's supposed to happen. That she was originally in the comics a agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. Supposedly she had a relationship with Nick Fury. And it feels like here that she's at least not necessarily part of Hydra, but that is part of maybe some shadowy government organization working up.
It's fun, right? She's fun. And that's what I love about her as an actress, number one. I mean, she's Julia Louis-Dreyfus is playing amazing, but she's fun. She makes you laugh every time she's on screen. She's ominous. We haven't had stuff like that in the MCU in a while. And Ray, you did tap on the other kind of the third now theme of the show, which is soldiers, and our military do not get enough credit for the amazing work that they do around the world. And we barely scratch the surface with asking ourselves about what are the armed services going through when they've been in battle or been in the service and get out. And, just a real quick thing, and then I'll be quiet about Falcon and the Winter Soldier is, I asked real world event. I asked a friend of mine who served and he had been in combat. I said, hey, man, how do you deal with coming back here? And people don't really care about what you've done. I mean, they might say they do, but they don't actively go out and really care, right? And he said one of the greatest things I've ever heard. And Ray, in my team building work with sports teams and businesses, this was a really a big eye opener for selflessness for me. He says, Lee, I'm doing this so you don't have to care. And I was like, man, that's the perfect answer. And it says a lot about our armed forces, man. He's doing that so we don't have to care. He's not doing it for recognition. Right? And I think that actually speaks to John Walker a bit too. He did what he had to do to keep people safe. And he said that. I did what you said. So there's a lot of incredibly strong undercurrents to this show that, again, I don't think the MCU has ever come close to. Maybe Captain America 2 a little bit, where he says this isn't, what does he say? This is not power, this is fear, right? Right. A little bit, like a little pinch of Salt Bay there, But wow, what a great show, and I'm looking forward to seeing if they use this platform again in the future to tackle other issues.
Yes, no, for sure. Before we move on to our next segment, just want to take a look at the chat. Matt mentions that we don't have enough of this kind of stuff these days, especially not without an agenda one way or another, which is a good point. Landon, we will get to Mortal Kombat later in the show. Mortal Kombat! Yes, and Casey has promised me a sandwich when I come back east. I cannot wait.
But Casey knows food. Casey's a foodie, so you can trust him.
Oh, good. Well, I am as well. So Casey, you should come out here as well, and we could have steaks.
When Casey offers to cook for the team, I don't say no to that.
That's smart. I would be the same. I would not say no as well either.
Yeah, Casey was just voluntold to do that, by the way, when you're here.
That's fantastic. So listen, let us know what you guys thought of the finale, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Let us know in chat, and we'll get to your comments and whatnot. Casey promises cooking, which is great. Yes, comment in the chat. So Caitlin can't see us, but she can't. So is that on your end, Caitlin? It's not on our end, right? Like, and Casey is promising ribeye night. So there we go. So some fun stuff happening in chat. As we move on to our next topic, speaking still of Captain America, we mentioned one of the big things that this series really tried to do. Oh, and by the way, we just need to briefly mention Sharon as the power broker was the last thing there at the end. She's now been pardoned back in America, and she is clearly still the power broker. That is a big thing. I wonder if she's going to be a big bad or working with whatever the big bad of the next phase is, and that is a huge...
What? Someone got... I am going to drop this because someone brought this up, and I thought it was very interesting. This is actually a perfect way to kind of leave this topic. We talked about in the second episode how Sam talks about the big three: wizards, aliens, and what was the third one?
Androids?
Yes. Okay. It's always one of the three. So someone with a conspiracy theory, I'm going to say this is out there, but they said, what if Sharon is like a Skrull or something? And I said, you know what? That's not that far-fetched. That what if that's not actually Sharon Carter? Right? And I said, okay, that's interesting. Of course, it could be like the DC universe where they just throw Martian Manhunter in there for no reason whatsoever. Just to be like, that's what he looks like. But no,
I mean, or you could go really deep and she could be a life model decoy gone rogue, which, of course, that would be an android.
I just want to stir the pot. I like doing that. We got to get back to the geekdom a little bit after all this realism, but I wanted to stir the pot that that would be interesting. What if she's like a dark Skrull or something?
It would be interesting. And we know they're doing Secret Invasion, so we'll see what happens there. Hey. But what we also know now is that they announced immediately, almost like 8 hours after the show debuted, Captain America 4 has begun to be written. It's being written by the showrunner and staff of Falcon and Winter Soldier. And so I don't know if they're going to do a second season of Captain America and the Winter Soldier, but they might instead now, this might be a setup for that next film that they were obviously keeping under wraps until this debuted, until this show fully aired. And obviously now Sam is Cap. I'm all for it. I think this is great. Super excited knowing that we're going to another Captain America movie. Honestly, more Marvel content is always welcome. So I am thrilled about this, and to see Anthony Mackie now, he'll get to star as Captain America on the big screen, or on Disney Plus, depending. This is a big deal, so I'm super thrilled for it.
And that's what I'm interested to see. Like I'll make some predictions now. All of Phase 4 will go forward as planned. Anything in Phase 4 is going to be in the theater, and I don't think Disney's going to abandon the theater in any way. But I will be interested to see as we move towards Phase 5, which is probably 2-3 years from now. If they start to lean on Disney Plus more for the series type content, and how major motion picture releases and Disney series coincide with each other. Because, again, there's money to be made in both, obviously. It's just going to be very interesting to see where they lean on, right? And where the money is as we kind of, the theater industry is going to go through some changes here over the next few years. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But it is phenomenal the way they have transitioned Sam from Falcon into Captain America. And he is, whether anybody likes it or not, he is Captain America. And I just, last note, Ray, man, his suit was kick-ass. I loved it. It was beautiful. I thought it was extremely comic accurate, as was U.S. Agent.
Yes.
And I loved it. It's sharp. Really well done by Marvel.
Yeah, no, it was terrifically done, absolutely perfect. Actually, Casey mentions that in chat as well about his costume, specifically the stars and stripes, kind of referencing both. It kind of looked a bit like the Air Force logo, which of course we know Sam, served in the Air Force. We also know that it also looked like the missing man reference, which for those of you who don't know is an Air Force formation talking about when, which is done when for pilots who have lost their lives in combat and whatnot. And it kind of is a reference to what we believe is a reference to, obviously, Steve Rogers, where it's a missing stripe, where Cap's one of his suits had a star with 3 stripes on it. Sam's is a star with 2 stripes, and the missing stripe is reference to that missing man tribute. So at least that's what we believe that design was for and done, and it very tastefully done, very well done. For sure. And Casey also mentions in chat, yes, it is weird that a Carter, because obviously Sharon is the descendant, the grandniece of Peggy, that she would be evil. I don't know if she's fully evil. I think she's out for number 1 at this point, Casey, and she's number 1 in her mind. And the power broker, she deals with that. It's the highest bidder. She's kind of one of those guns. She's kind of a free agent now in a way, even though she is technically working again for the American government. And you saw a lot of that this episode, her playing both ends against the middle, including Batroc, who weirdly was also, we briefly mentioned, they just killed him off this episode, which I thought was weird. But
he had nowhere else to go. He had nowhere else to go in the series. That's why they killed him off. Same thing with Carly.
That's true. And you could only have so many non-superpowered villains, I guess, in this universe.
That's Carly's story had ended, right? Like sometimes when your story's done, they move you out. That's the way it is.
Yes.
It's like Iron Man. My 8-year-old father recently watched every single Marvel film over the course of maybe a month and a half. I'm not kidding. And he said it was such a shame that they killed off Iron Man. And I said there was nowhere else for his character to go. That was the journey from completely selfish to selfless over 22 movies. And, as soon as he earned selflessness, there's literally no place else for him to go except for death. And that's what they did.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I also briefly want to mention, this wasn't on the rundown, but also there's a billboard was bought here in LA this week where a bunch of fans, and this goes back to the Snyder Cut, and this talks about fans out of control. They bought a billboard saying to bring Tony Stark back. That's not happening, folks. That is not in Marvel's plans. They have plans for Ironheart, who will take on the mantle on Disney Plus at some point. You have to learn to let these characters, certain things go, right? Not the character. Obviously, Iron Man will always live on in comics and other media and video games and other stuff like that. But in this iteration, he did. And that's it. And that's permanent. And you're just going to have to move on with it. And the fact that you wasted your money, which you could probably have put towards 100 different better things, on a billboard that Kevin Feige probably never even saw until it hit social media, you're getting a little out of control here. And the entitlement, it just reeks of entitlement here.
Superman was dead. Superman was dead. And he came back. Superman was dead. Twice. 2 different movies. 2 times he came back. Because of us.
Well, no, actually, Superman came back in the story anyway.
I know, 2 times. I said, yeah.
Yeah, it's
it's true though. With the fans being out of control. It's not out of control. I admire that fans love these characters as much to do something like that. But at the same time, this is also why fans don't always get to make decisions. I'll equate it to sports, right? If GMs of any pro sports team listened to fans, the team would be the worst team in the league. We know that. Those guys are paid to do
Except
it.
for me.
If you know what you're doing and you feel that strongly about it, that you want to jump into a career with it, get into the game that you want to be part of. Otherwise, be a fan and say, this is my opinion. But don't act like you know, right? And I shouldn't say no. I mean, you got to be realistic, right? Because I actually think your baseball opinions are very valid. I think you'd be fine as a GM of the Yankees. I'm just saying that, if you want it, that's not what you're pursuing. That's my point.
Right.
If you know about the game, get in the game, all right? But those people are paid a lot of money to make decisions, and those decisions are extremely, extremely hard. And it's tough to make a right decision in sports. That's the other thing, too. Everybody sits back in fandom and goes, it's so easy. Just do this, this, and this. Right. No, it's just that easy, right? Just these 3 things will make you a Stanley Cup champion. It doesn't work that way. It's insanely hard to win, and it's insanely hard to make something like the MCU, the trillion-dollar industry that it is. So just relax and enjoy the film. Eat your popcorn and shut up. Comment below if you don't agree.
I'm not saying you have to completely shut up. Obviously, fan feedback is welcome, but there is a line that it crosses. And speaking of GMs, by the way, I'm 10-2 now in my MLB The Show franchise after making all those trades, which I love. My TikTok blew up. People were like, "You got screwed by the Phillies. Why would you give up Giancarlo Stanton?" It's like, because I wanted the best catcher in the game, JT Realmuto. Like,
You know,
I'd rather have a better catcher than a fourth
I'm just
outfielder.
going to take solace in that you said that. That's fine with me.
No, I'm just saying. Like, and I wanted Didi Gregorius back because I'm a big Didi fan.
Me too.
And I traded Gleyber Torres for pitching because that's what Cashman should have done when that offer was on the table.
Do you think the real Phillies would have made that trade?
Actually, yes.
You do. I don't for a second think they'd let Real Muto go after what we just signed him for.
Because here's the here's the thing. You get. First off, you get. Look, as much as I don't like Chapman as a person for what he did to his I think it was wife. I'm not sure if they're married or girlfriend. And it's part of the reason why I put Chapman in the trade. There's also no denying his talent.
Sure.
And the Phillies desperately need bullpen help. I also think that Gary Sanchez. I think that. Gary had the best year of his career under Joe Girardi.
Right.
I think Girardi would be able to get Gary back to that 2017 level where he was one of the best up-and-coming catchers, right? Probably the number 2 catcher in the game.
Yeah, I don't think they trade Real Muto. I think he's too much of a glue for that team. That's why I'm saying that.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's completely fair.
I'm
I
not
mean,
saying
for
they
his
wouldn't
personality,
entertain it, though.
right? But
Yeah.
I mean, and then Giancarlo Stanton, look, I don't like him. I think he'd do better in the National League. I think you put him in left field or whatever. I think, or you spell him with Harper, or you figure something else out with him.
Right.
Also, I mean, again, I think it also would have been if they added the universal DH this year. I think that Stanton's value would have gone up for a National League team.
Sure.
Sure. But anyway, we're going way off topic.
Here's the last
here.
question though. What are the Phillies doing in your game? What is their record? Because that's the
you know
real
what? Actually, I
test.
haven't looked.
Yeah,
I
so
actually
you
haven't
got to
looked.
report back on that next week. Because if the Phillies are 2-10, then you're dreaming. Bud.
Then obviously I kind of hose them. Yeah. So, but yeah, we will see. That's a good point. I will look at the stats and I'll give you all a franchise update next week. But yeah, speaking of moving on now to our next Disney topic. Really quickly, this is also another fun thing. Disney unveiled a new animatronic, kid Groot. It's not a baby and it's not the teenage Groot, but it's a fully animatronic.
It's definitely
Groot.
the next Groot we're going to see in the film.
Yes.
That's what it is.
Walking around Avengers Campus or getting it ready to walk around Avengers Campus at Disneyland and Disney World. I just thought this was a fun story. It also freaks me out how good robots are getting. And I'm telling you, do not call it Skynet. Do not link it up to the internet. Do not let it do all this stuff. I'm telling you that we are on the precipice of bad things happening with the robots.
Yeah. I mean, it makes you wonder, Ray, but like, do we silently root for that? Like, oh man, I really hope that thing goes rogue and starts going, I am Groot and walking around campus.
I am Groot.
Yeah.
I am Groot.
Yeah. Or do we hope for the best where he walks up to kids? Now is it completely AI or is it controlled by someone? That's the real question. Because they're known for
I think there is a controller.
Right.
I think there has to be a control for it to interact with the denizens of the Disneyland.
Right.
I feel there has to be a controller nearby so that it doesn't go haywire and like smack a kid or something.
We've gone a long way from Megatron coming out in a costume talking to the kids to an actual Groot. But then again, you can't put someone in a Groot costume, so it kind of makes sense. At least not a convincing one.
Right. So that was a fun story this week. Also, what was fun, more Disney stuff. We've got a lot more Disney stories. The first Shang-Chi trailer dropped.
Yeah.
I am super excited for this film. Even though Shang-Chi, of course, came out in the 70s and it was really Marvel's first Asian superhero. They did a good job of getting rid of some of the stereotypes of the time. His father is not Fu Manchu anymore. They've gotten rid of that character completely and kind of taken some of that person. They've made it personal by making the Mandarin also the father of Shang-Chi, so he's got some of that Fu Manchu in him. They kind of hint at the idea that the Mandarin is like 1,000 years old at least.
Right.
They made it so it's not 10 rings on his finger, it's 10 rings or like bands around his arm, so like kind of like combat bands, which kind of makes a lot more sense. And it looks good. It looks like a good martial arts flick. And it looks like the big question is going to be, how does this tie fully into the Marvel Universe? Obviously, it's got more magic involved. We know that obviously Doctor Strange, blew that door off his hinges. So, that's a big thing. We know we're getting Fin Fang Foom. I know we're getting Fin Fang Foom, which means we're getting a real dragon in the Marvel Universe. That's a big deal. We also saw Razor Fist, who is just like he says, he's basically a dude who replaced one of his hands with a sword. And it looks like it's gonna be a really good. Also, we got I can't think of the name. They've pulled the biggest and best villains from Shang-Chi's history into this film. They've made two of the big ones henchmen for the Mandarin. It makes perfect sense because the Mandarin a lot of times won't do his own dirty work. He has people doing it for him. I'm super excited for it. It's coming in September. Cannot wait. Got the first trailer. I don't think Randall's in chat yet, but if he's there, I know he's super excited because he called it that the trailer is coming sooner than I thought it was, and it is here. Lee, what are your thoughts?
A few thoughts. One is that I'm really excited for this too. I've been asked by a lot of people, I don't know anything about that guy. What's it going to do? How's it going to be placed? And I remind everyone that when they announced Guardians of the Galaxy in phase 2 or 3, whatever that was, people were like, oh, I don't know who they are. How's that going to fit? And even I was skeptical of, people really don't know these characters. I'm interested to see if they can pull this off. And I remember thinking if they can pull this off, it's going to be big. And they did. They pulled it off massively. So I don't question the MCU, people, Marvel or Disney anymore of whether they can pull off characters. And there's a lot of new characters in Phase 4 that nobody really knows outside comic nerds like us. But until they don't pull one off, I'm rooting for it. The other thing that I'm excited to see, Ray, is that Marvel has been sprinkling in, even past Iron Man 3, 10 Rings tattoos on people. So you can look this up on the internet. You can look at like 10 Rings tattoos throughout the MCU. They've been sprinkling them in other movies. So there is a connection, albeit we don't hear about it too often. And I'm very interested to see the real Mandarin. If there is any, like if there's a one-liner about the Mandarin in Iron Man 3. But the other thing too is the martial arts in this trailer. I was like, wow. I mean, this is they went full out. I mean, this is like a thank you letter to martial arts. We're going to talk about that again in a few minutes with Mortal Kombat. But yeah, looking forward to it. Every movie from Marvel should get you excited. And you got to remind yourself too, just for the audience too. There's a lot of people. Well, who's going to show up? What Avengers are going to show up? Other characters we're spoiled here because of like Civil War and Thor Ragnarok, and then all the team up movies. They're not always going to show up in the other movies. That's not realistic for every movie. And it's called Shang-Chi. It's going to be about Shang-Chi, and you'll get a post-credit scene of someone going, "Hey, you should join the Avengers."
That's probably like Ant-Man or something pops into San Francisco.
Yeah.
And
there could be a lot of people. Doctor Strange, like you said.
Right. There's a lot that could happen there. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some people. And honestly, we'll need to see. I think that, Shang-Chi is really the first. I get that technically Black Widow is the first film, but it's a prequel. I think that Shang-Chi is the first movie, not TV show, that's pushing things forward in the Marvel universe. And I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that really kicks things off on that aspect. Speaking of Marvel films, and again, folks, feel free to let us know what you think in chat. Russell Crowe, we talked about this a few weeks ago. We were speculating what role he would be playing in Thor 4, Thor, Love and Thunder. It has been confirmed now that he is playing not old Thor, he is playing Zeus, which means that they are doing something that Marvel has done for a while, is they are also bringing in the Greek pantheon of gods, which now has everyone speculating, does this lead to Hercules, who of course is one of Thor's best friends, because they're both like, I'm a god, and you're a god, all right, and they're just kind of like, I think one person brother,
more often than not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They relate to each other on a lot of different levels. And then, of course, the internet then started speculating, not only if they bring Hercules in, but then who will play Hercules, including some folks saying that it should be Henry Cavill, just to finish giving DC the ultimate FU for how they messed up Superman in a lot of ways and how they handled that whole situation. So I don't think that's going to happen, but I wouldn't also rule it off the table. But, I'm excited. Russell Crowe playing Zeus, I think, makes perfect sense. I think it's a great idea that they're going to bring the Greek gods in. Hercules also was an Avenger at some point. It would make sense that somehow they work Hercules in and that maybe he's on Earth or whatever, filling in for Thor while Thor's off in space with the Guardians. I think there's a lot they can do with this. Lee, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. Again, like I said before about Shang-Chi, some of these things make you like, wow, you're really going there. But until they mess it up, I'm not going to question it. Another big thing about Hercules, Ray. Now they have announced She-Hulk, and Hercules and She-Hulk have been together before in the past. So that's another potential tie-in. There's a lot of different ways you could do it, but I'm all for it, man. I'm all for it until it sucks, and it hasn't sucked yet.
Yeah, that's true. Probably the lowest point was WandaVision, and even that wasn't terrible.
Yeah, some people would say Thor too, but I mean, then again, that was still kind of early on within the MCU when you really think about it, and it's before they transitioned Thor's character from dark evil, dark Thor, I am Thor, to I'm in the Guardians of the Galaxy and I'm fun now. Like that's a major change.
Did I say Kurt Russell? I'm pretty sure I said Russell Crowe, Matt. Kurt Russell, we know, is Ego the Living Planet, and he got killed in Guardians 2, basically.
Matt in chat's asking if you said that, but if you did, it's Russell Crowe. Yes, we all agree it's Russell Crowe.
Yes, sorry. If I misspoke, I apologize.
I missed it too, it's definitely. If you said that. A lot of Russells in the MCU now, okay? You try doing the show.
Yeah. Yeah, so Matt's first comment in 10 minutes is Ray, did you mess up? Thank you, Matt. So, so moving on now to another story. This was interesting. This was brought up this week because as we're talking more about different things going on in the Marvel Universe, what's happening in Phase 4, we also know Black Panther 2 is coming. And somebody pointed out this week, smartly, that Shuri also got snapped along with Black Panther. And this is something I didn't think about, and I wanted to put this out there to people if you haven't heard this. But who took over Wakanda if both Black Panther and Shuri were snapped for 5 years? That is a big, interesting question, and I have to imagine they're going to touch on that at some point. Maybe not even immediately in Black Panther 2, but maybe some other series leading up to that. Because I don't know who else would take over. They could do something simple and have someone else do it. You could have a power struggle now.
A few things with that, Ray. So there's two choices. One of them is kind of hinted at, and the other one we don't know about. One would be his mother, right? It's possible that she just reigns as queen, but we don't know if she got snapped or not. All right, but I will point to the fact that during Infinity War. We do know that M'Baku was not snapped. Like they do show that he survives. So I think it would be poetic if that actually brought all the clans back together, as it was hinted as in Infinity War. Thank you for being here. You know, that maybe M'Baku took over because he's the only one that's really challenged for it.
It's true,
and we know he was alive. So I also think that would be a really cool story of he took over and then rescinded the throne as soon as. The Black Panther came back, but it is a great question. We don't know. There's a lot of questions like that. That we know MCU is not afraid to talk about that. A lot of things went bad after the blip.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting, fun speculation out there from a lot of fans. I'm all for it. I think it's a great. I think the M'Baku theory holds a lot of weight, holds a lot of water. I think that would make a lot of sense, and then you could have him fight again for the throne. And actually, if you wanted to, because technically in the comics, M'Baku is a villain. If you wanted to, I'm not sure, because I don't know how they're going to, I don't think they'll call, like I said this before, I'm pretty sure they are going to retire the name of Manape from the comics. But yeah, that was the villain that M'Baku was in the comics originally, and you wonder if they go that route, maybe make him fully villain because it's like, oh, I'm only king when nobody's here, like, you know.
Well, so we know that Chadwick Boseman comes back, and there's a scene in Wakanda of everybody celebrating at the end of Endgame. What we don't know is how they're going to transition from Chadwick Boseman to Shuri, and again, you gotta have to trust them. It's very delicate and it's very hard to do, but we'll see how they do it. They said again that there's not going to be a CGI Chadwick Boseman. I don't actually believe that. I think we'll see something.
I've even said you could have somebody else wearing the suit.
Yeah, you're right.
And having his face covered and then have him killed somehow.
Yeah.
And I think
or sacrifice themselves.
Right. Yeah, or a selfless sacrifice. Yeah, you could do something along those lines. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Even in a flashback kind of thing, like you have like Shuri already fighting for the throne with M'Baku, and like she remembers like how they got here, kind of do an in media res kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you're already in the action.
Well, and
they
remember,
do a
it's like, unless they cut this out completely, like all the Black Panthers have to go to the ancestral plane as part of the transition. So it's like, I have a feeling we're going to see, whether it's other footage or something. I just don't, I have a feeling we're going to see Chadwick Boseman one more time. But we'll see. Hey, listen, Marvel will figure it out.
Yes. Speaking of figuring it out, another big thing from Disney this week was that they did end up acquiring the Spider-Man rights for Disney Plus, which is a big deal. And basically, this is a big deal. Sony kind of getting their cake and eating it too, as you put it online, Lee. And it's a great way of putting it because it's true. Sony will get paid by Netflix this huge amount of money for what is now officially just called the Pay One window, which means the first few months of availability on streaming services, all the Spider-Man films will go to Netflix. Once that Pay One window is up, which I think is 6 months. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's half a year. Might be it's somewhere between half and a full year. They will then revert back to Disney Plus. So the Spider-Man films in the MCU will live on Disney Plus at some point. So you can get the full MCU there. But the fact that Netflix will get the initial exclusivity is a big deal for them. And it also means that Sony's getting paid twice, which everyone knows they probably need that money right now. And that is a big deal for them.
It's awesome. First off, it's exactly how the deal should be, right? If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. But here you go with the new age of negotiating movie and TV rights properties. The question I have is, we haven't seen the Spider-Man films on Netflix yet. I hope that's going to happen soon because I do want to watch them again. It is noticeably missing from Disney Plus, but look, all the MCU films should be together in one place at some point. It doesn't have to be right away. But they should be together, and I'm glad that they did this. It was a smart win-win business move by everybody involved, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect, like I said, Lee, it makes perfect sense for everyone involved. And I think that, if you're a fan of Netflix and or Disney Plus, I think you're going to be happy. Sony's obviously going to be happy. And I think it's going to be, it's a win-win all around. So finally, we had a lot of Disney news this week, a lot of Marvel stuff. Moving away now, still on Netflix. They did announce something this week, which is a big deal. Witcher Season 2 and Cobra Kai Season 4 will both drop in Q4 of this year. Those are huge deals. Both were obvious. Cobra Kai was a huge success and huge acquisition away from YouTube TV or YouTube Red. And obviously, The Witcher, the first season, was a huge success for Netflix. So they continue to bolster their library and their catalog of huge hits. And this again just makes perfect sense. We knew Cobra Kai was being worked on. We knew that they were in the middle of shooting season 4. It makes sense that they're aiming for a Q4 release for that after season 3 dropped on New Year's Day.
The tectonic plates of television continue to move. It's beautiful. I love that they announced this. Both shows are awesome. I actually think that's pretty good timing considering COVID and that they had to shoot these things during the middle of a pandemic for the most part, which is pretty awesome. The other thing I'll say too, Ray, is that I admire Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai tried something, and they did a smart thing by saying at the start of Season 3 that Season 4 is in training. And the reason why I thought that was really brilliant, and you're going to probably start to see more shows do this, is because people don't want to watch one season and have your show canceled, which happens all the time on networks, all the time. So I think it's really brilliant to say, look, this show's going to have multiple seasons. You can watch it. You can binge it. You're going to feel good about it. And you're not going to lose it after one season. Witcher was an amazing success where Witcher 1 left off. This isn't really a spoiler, but Witcher 1 left off, the season 1, where Witcher 3, the game, starts. So I'm interested to see kind of how they move into that because it's a well-known game. A lot of people didn't know the short stories of The Witcher with 1 and 2. Unless you played those games, which not a lot of people have played both of them. So it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. But I'm a big fan of The Witcher, big fan of Cobra Kai, as you know. So it's good to know that this entire year is just going to be a nod to geekdom once again. We win.
Yes, indeed. So speaking of streaming services and whatnot, we now move on to something I've been wanting to talk about since 4 a.m. when I finished watching it. Is Mortal Kombat, of course, over on HBO Max, Warner Brothers. Yeah.
How can you not say it like that? How come I'm the only one saying it like that? Like there's no other way to say it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I just call it Mortal Kombat because it's
Kombat.
No. Lee, are you okay? We're gonna spoil. I want to really get into this because I am.
We're spoiling Mortal Kombat if you haven't seen it. With that said, we're not spoiling anything because
right.
It's not gonna hurt you watching the movie. Like, how about this? This is the quick spoiler-free review. What we're about to spoil will not ruin the experience for you in any way.
That's very fair. Yeah, that's very, very fair. I will say this: it was better than Mortal Kombat Annihilation, but I still think
that's not hard.
Yeah, I still think the first one was better.
That's like saying, Captain America was better than the 1990 Captain America. Like, it's the bar is really low there. He's not wearing a motorcycle helmet.
Yeah, no, I think the first Mortal Kombat's still better. I think it did a better job with the characters. I think a better job with I will say this: the couple of Outworld parts were cool when they were out in Outworld, but I'll say this: there are some cool moments. There are some really fun, heavy-handed homages to the game that I absolutely love. There's also some little details. Yeah. There's this scene where they keep kick-sweeping Kano, and he's like, is that the only move you know? Which is clearly an homage to the people who did that playing the game. There's also a point where Cole Young, the big thing, the whole movie is like, use your uppercut, Dad. And it's basically obviously paying homage again to the fact that the uppercut was the one of the most powerful moves in the game. Back in the original game, and a lot of people, if you could nail an uppercut on somebody, it was a big deal. It took away a huge chunk of their life bar. So there's there were moments like that I very, very much enjoyed. Do not get me wrong. I did not mind the heavy-handed homages in that regard. But there were also a lot of missed opportunities. There were also a lot of things that just made no sense. And there was a lot of things that, as a Mortal Kombat fan, I feel like this script needed 2 more passes from somebody who knew what the heck the series goes on in the series. I also want to point out that some of the acting was atrocious. Like B-movie level acting here. But also some of it was great. What's his name? I want to say, where is it? Josh Lawson, the guy who played Kano, stole the show. Totally. Josh Lawson absolutely stole the show. There are other things they said there was a champion named Eddie Tobias that of course is an homage to both Ed Boon and John Tobias, the guys who created Mortal Kombat. Fishy in chat mentions there was a button combo in the graffiti, which was a solid Easter egg. There's a lot of Easter eggs here. You saw Nightwolf, Kotal Khan. What is it? There's I'm blank. They mentioned Bo Rai Cho. There's a whole bunch of other characters that you either hear their name or you see somewhere in the background or in artwork or something else.
And I really appreciate the huge reveal at the end.
Yes, and then of course the movie ends on the Easter egg, and it makes sense now that like they have to get more fighters for the incoming invasion from Outworld. That despite Earthrealm winning the tournament, Shang Tsung is not done, and they basically say that the first person they're going to get is Johnny Cage.
Was there a tournament?
That's one of my biggest problems.
Right?
Was
there a tournament?
There really wasn't a tournament in this, even though they kind of say that there had to be, and that there was this whole thing with like the fights went to all the fighters end up breaking off and pairing off and going to fighting each other and whatnot. You have Cabal versus Liu Kang, which was a cool fight. You had Natara versus Kung Lao. You had Jax versus Raiko, who I was shocked and happy to see. Some of the characters, although Raiko was like, that was like 80s B-movie henchman. Like, he's just like, doesn't say anything. He's just holding a hammer. And it's just like, okay, that you could have done a little more with him, but okay. And there were also a couple other things where like, there's one battle at the pit. Basically, I'm going to spoil it. The Jax versus Raiko fight is at the pit. I think specifically the Mortal Kombat 2 pit. And the fact that they did I love the fact that they did fatalities, by the way, throughout the film. Kano fatalities, Reptile, Kung Lao fatalities, Natara. Like, it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome to see on the big screen. It's gory in a fun, hysterical, over-the-top way, just like the games. Why was Raiko not uppercutted into the pit by Jax? It feels like a missed opportunity there.
Totally. Look, let's look at the movie as a whole. I think the first thing we need to say, Ray, is that we've been talking about this movie since they announced it. It was exactly what we said it was going to be, and the seesaw went more towards enjoyable than non-enjoyable. That's what I would say.
I'll give it a 6 out of 10.
Yeah,
I'll say it's a little above average.
Very Godzilla v. Kong type film, in the sense of, like, you got to go into it mindless. You can't be looking for deep plot. You can't be looking for expert writing. Or even expert acting. But if you go into it as a bloody, gory Mortal Kombat mess, that's exactly what it is. Cole Young, in terms of his character, we were very worried about his placement in the film. I'll say it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but still did not need to do it. That's what I'll say, right? Like it was actually kind of weird when Liu Kang shows up, because we're so used to Liu Kang being the main character in the original film that it was weird to not see him in the first person. But I'll also say this too, that this film borrows heavily from the first film in terms of inspiration. They didn't really hide that. The fatalities were fun, but also nothing new. There was nothing. They are fatalities that I had already seen in the game.
Yeah, Kano ripping a guy's heart out.
Right.
We've seen all.
I thought they shortchanged Goro pretty heavily.
They missed that. They wasted Goro, in my opinion, entirely.
Yep. I won't spoil what happens with him. I'll just say that they didn't do him well enough. But it was fun. It was fun. The other thing too is that they're taking a Resident Evil film approach, which is that, we'll loosely follow the stories of the games, but we're making new characters and you'll follow the new character. If this gets a sequel, I mean, obviously at the end of the film, this is the big spoiler at the end of the film, is that Cole Young is now searching for Johnny Cage, and that they're going to go to Hollywood to find Johnny Cage. And, so again, the characters outside Raiden and Shang Tsung and Sonya and Jax are a little bit random. They're just a little bit random about who they picked. And Liu Kang, excuse me, he's not random at all. It doesn't really follow the first game, which is okay. It was a fun mess. It was a hot mess of fun, and doesn't have high rewatchability. I'm not gonna ever watch it again, most likely, unless I have to on stream or something like that. But I made it through in one pass. It wasn't unenjoyable. The funny part I thought was, and again, I'll only go halfway with this spoiler, but I like how they called Cole the human punching bag in the beginning, and then how that evolved throughout the movie. But Ray, I wouldn't give it a 6. I'd probably give it a 5, but 5 is watchable. 5 is watchable, and
I mean, it's in that range. It's 5 to 6. Like, because there were those moments where it's like, oh, that is fun that they did that. Like, and there's little things like you get Shinnok's amulet. Kano tries to steal it. You get Katana's fan blades in the background. Right. Which, again, by the way, I don't know why. Like Melina and Katana, they're characters that are so inextricably linked.
I didn't get
games.
That either.
They're completely nothing here.
And they also heavily focus on Sub-Zero and Scorpion. Which again, it's like I knew that story though, and they had done that in the game so often that I don't think there was any way around it. They did them way better than the original '90s movie did, to be fair. And with Scorpion's the only mention of the underworld, right? So
the Netherrealm.
So like they're look, they had an hour and 45 minutes to make something work. They're leaning heavily on that you have an idea what's going on, and if you don't, they're leaning on the fact that you like blood and gore and the things they're good. But I'll tell you this: nothing was shocking. Nothing was shocking.
No,
none of the fatalities were shocking. You can see them all coming too.
Yeah.
And some of the moves are cool to see in live action, but the game does them so well that nothing was special within that. I am interested to see if they get a sequel, and I have a feeling they're going to. I have a feeling that movie's going to get a sequel.
Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how many people watch it, how many people see it in the theaters. Just also briefly want to mention for those some folks are popping up again in chat. This is the middle of a Mortal Kombat spoiler cast. So again, you have been warned. as we are in the middle of another episode of Geeks Who Like Sports, episode 106. We are doing it live.
I would watch. I would probably watch a sequel if they made one, but it'd have to be good. This is one of those movies, Ray, where they could actually launch pad from this movie to actually really get a little more in depth into the canon of it. So one of the things I'm thinking is, and they didn't clarify this, at least I didn't hear it, was that in the movie the idea is Shang Tsung is sending the Outworld army to pick off the Earthrealm contestants before the tournament. So I'm wondering if there was no tournament in this film. I'm wondering if that's what the sequel is supposed to be, is the actual tournament. Right, the 10th tournament. So that is the one thing that they borrowed from the first movie heavily, was that Outworld has won 9 tournaments in a row, and if they win the 10th tournament, they take over Earthrealm.
They can take over Earth.
Yeah, and the thing is that was in the first movie as well. So very interesting. Didn't hate it. Actually, quite enjoyed it for a one-time watch. Very much a 90s movie, if you know what I mean, which we don't get too many of those often. Actually, how about this? I felt the same way after this as I felt when I watched Bill and Ted 3. Just, hey, that was fun. That was it.
That's fair. I mean, look, again, there were some things that, again, I did enjoy. Again, my biggest problem, and you mentioned it, Lee, I think I was less tolerant of him than you were.
Of Cole
Young.
Yeah.
I felt Cole Young was absolutely unnecessary as a character. His whole family shtick, absolutely didn't work for me. It's like, it felt like, we're going to have this movie full of blood and gore and guts and absolutely crazy fight scenes, but we're also going to try and have it appeal to families and make Cole a family man and give him a daughter and a wife. And I just was like,
it made no sense.
Made no sense.
Yeah.
I didn't need that at all.
I would die for my family. That's why I'm leaving them, so they can be ambushed and almost killed. But then I'm going to return to save them and then leave them again. So they can. And
I'm going to get this stupid armor power,
right,
which just allows me to absorb things like Luke Cage or Bishop from X-Men or something like. And it felt completely unnecessary, and I feel like you mentioned Liu Kang. I feel like, and by the way, they mentioned both specifically that they're both orphans, both Cole and Liu Kang. I felt like you could have taken where Liu Kang explains a lot of stuff when he first shows up. I feel like you could have given that to Kung Lao and still had Liu Kang be this orphan with this weird birthmark who doesn't know what it's going for, and done this whole thing and not given him a family and not had this weird freaking character that you created out of thin air that seemed absolutely unnecessary. I really feel like you could have just done this like in the comics, in the video games, and of course in the first movie where Liu Kang is the main character. I think you don't need a new guy. You didn't need a new guy.
I don't know why they departed from that. There is a lineage thing that they added into that storyline, which could have been done differently. But yeah, look again. Overall, I don't know if tolerance is the right word. Because they didn't need Cole Young in this movie. I'm just saying the performance wasn't as bad as it could have been. And like I said, how about this? I wasn't annoyed by the character. I'm annoyed by the decision to include the character, but I wasn't annoyed by him. He didn't bug me too much in the film. And like you said, Kano stole the show. He was hilarious. His interactions with Sonya Blade, really his interactions with everybody was really well
his
done.
interactions with Kung Lao and Liu Kang at the dinner table.
And that was my other pet peeve, real quick. Yeah, the dinner table scene was hilarious. With Kung Lao, I mean, they drastically underused Shang Tsung, all right?
Yes.
And Shang Tsung's only fight is he does a fatality and then never uses his well-known power at all.
Yeah, which is shape-shifting.
Yeah.
He never shapeshifts.
He takes
the
a
whole
soul,
movie.
but never shapeshifts. So, again, look, this was built with sequel in mind.
Clearly.
But it's going to be a direct to HBO Max sequel.
No, I agree. I completely agree. I was very, again, I
check it out though. It's free. If you have HBO Max,
again, I enjoyed it enough to still give it a 6. But man, there are some glaring problems with this film that I feel like, again, somebody who's familiar with everything and script writing and doctoring could have given this another pass or two and just kind of cleaned it up. It needed to be clean. It could have been cleaned up.
I wonder how much this suffered because of the pandemic too, though. And maybe we'll find out, maybe not. But look, here's the thing. I give it a 5. Like for me, the scale I always think about is rewatchability. A 10 film is something I can watch every day, right? A 0 film is one I don't ever want to see a first time. A 5 is something I saw it, I enjoyed it, I don't ever plan on watching it again. 4 would be like, I'm not watching that again. This one's like, I don't plan on watching it again.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of in the same boat there with the 6, where I'm kind of again, it's a shame because there were parts that I really, really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And there were parts, and then it was just, there were parts that were like, oh, I hate you all so much for doing this.
Well, look, my final thought is if you have HBO Max, it's free because you're paying for it. Watch it. It's definitely worth a watch.
Yeah. No, for sure. Speaking of Warner Brothers and HBO Max, as we move on now into our next topic with we're still with Warner Brothers, is official. Michael Keaton is officially on board to Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, right? Not Diane.
Michael Keaton. No. Not
Sean Keaton, the well-known younger son cousin of Michael Keaton. This is Michael Keaton, Batman.
Michael Keaton is back as Batman. He has been confirmed. He will be back as Batman, reprising his role in the Flash, what we believe Flashpoint movie, and kind of doing the multiverse. And the fact that this is official, it makes me happy. It gives me a little bit of hope more for this film, and the fact that they'll hopefully just finally put the Snyderverse to bed and move on from here. But yeah, this is a big deal. We got Alfred Molina coming back as Doc Ock last week. We now have Michael Keaton coming back as Batman this week. This is a good decision. This gives me a little bit of hope because at this point, everything Warner Brothers makes is a 6 or below in terms of films at this rate. So I really genuinely hope that this helps this movie because that this isn't the disaster it could potentially be.
This is what I'll say. Michael Keaton famously refused the Batman 3 script because he said, quote, it sucked. Batman 4 was even worse. And then we moved on with our lives after that. But the fact that he agreed to come back, which we've talked about multiple times on this show, tells me that they've got something. They've got something that speaks to him. And that something may be, Ray, that, look, Michael Keaton, you're going to save the DCU, and you're going to be Batman from Batman Beyond, and we're going to give you a 3-movie deal of good writing after that because we need you to save DC movies. And I think that's my prediction that's going to happen. The Flashpoint's going to set up Batman Beyond. Flashpoint's going to set up Michael Keaton coming back in and doing what he does best. He has always cherished playing Batman. All you got to do is search him saying, I'm Batman throughout his entire career, including the last couple of years. I think
especially
he's coming
the last
in to
couple
save
years.
it. Yeah, and like, look, Birdman, that movie that won Best Picture, was a commentary on a lot of that for him. So I'm looking forward to having him back. I'm looking forward to seeing what DC does, and it's going to be really interesting to see from the multiverse wars, which I just coined right now, who's going to come out on top, Marvel, DC, or both. Again, we've said this on the show, Ray. DC, statistically, has done a better job with crossovers, both in comics and television, than Marvel ever has. So it's going to be very interesting to see if they continue that tradition or if Warner Brothers mucks it up by being Warner Brothers. But they're getting some big names to come in, Dwayne Johnson, Michael Keaton. I'm interested to see where this goes. But it's great news. It's great news.
Yeah, this is terrific for sure. Moving into video games now, we got a lot of people coming on board. Caitlin mentions in chat that her mom says, I'm Michael Keaton. Huh.
That's because he goes, I'm Batman.
Right.
Who are you? I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
What are you, man?
Why did you say that name?
I'm Batman. Oh, don't.
Why did you say that name?
Oh, the Batfleck's terrible. Batfleck is terrible.
Where
he
are
could have
they?
been good. He could have been
Where
good.
are they?
With better writing. I don't blame Ben.
I'm rich.
I blame the writing. But speaking of things that I'm rich. What's your superpower? I'm rich. Speaking of things, a lot of people coming on board. Now some people leaving. Our last quick geek story. Jeff Kaplan, for those of you who don't know, game director of Overwatch. And this is right on the heels of Overwatch 2 being delayed into 2022, has announced that after almost 20 years, he is leaving Blizzard Activision. And that is a big deal in the game industry. Curious to see where he goes from here. The architect of one of the biggest games of the last console generation says bye-bye. That is a curious decision. I don't know why that is. I'm sure it'll come out in the next few months as to why the decision was, whether it was money, whether it was work culture, what's going on, pressure. But that's a big deal when somebody who's been around for 2 decades leaves a company right in the middle of probably the biggest project of his career. It was an interesting thing. Lee, do you have any thoughts on Kaplan pulling the plug?
Yeah, it's either a coming to Jesus moment for him where he just wants to change in his life, or more likely the gaming industry is shifting massively, and it's happening beneath our feet, and very few people are realizing it, except for the people in the industry.
Yeah.
I really believe that. There is a lot of money, and it's going one direction right now, and I think people are getting desperate, and you're going to find out, Ray, who is a good leader in that industry and who is not, because when people get panicked, they make really bad decisions. They treat employees like crap. They stress them out for no reason, and those companies will fail. They will fail, and the ones that do it right will rise, and again, it's a phoenix thing. You rise from the ashes.
The industry is going to be fine as a whole, but it is interesting to see. There's a lot of, like I said, there's a lot of tectonic plates moving around right now in the industry.
Massive.
Companies being bought up and sold and whatnot. And it's going to be very interesting. And I wonder if there was a lot of it might have been a pressure thing, like you said, a lot of pressure on top on Kaplan to make Overwatch 2 good.
It might be a mix of both things. Like I said, look, man, another thing, like on a real level here, like the pandemic has really unveiled a lot of things about companies and organizations and how they work. And a lot of people have not been able to handle the working from home or from a corporate side, just handle their employees working from home, which we know now by the way, Ray, I don't know if you know this, but statistically now there's been a lot of research. People are more productive when they work from home. So, suddenly you have this kind of 100-year mentality of we work in the office 9 to 5, this is what we do, or if it's California, we work from 11 to 4, this is what we do, and suddenly people are going, no, I'm just going to work when I feel like it. And a lot of corporate leaders go, that's not the way it's done. That's not the way it's done. You know what? Again, Ray, not to turn this like about what we do here, but I tell my employees, and I mean this, I'm just giving this as an example. I don't care when you work as long as you get your work done. So if you want to work from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m., and that's when you do your best work, as long as it's done on time and it's good and it fits the parameters, you do that. You do you, because I just want your best work. Notwithstanding when we need to do things at 9 a.m., which does happen from time to time, right? Yeah. But I just want the best out of the people that we work together. That's it. Not, 9 a.m., be here. I'm Batman. That was just a throwback.
I know personally that like part of my biggest hindrance is adhering to the 9 to 5 schedule.
It makes no sense. Listen, again, I'm gonna geek out here. Geeks who like sports. Ray knows this about me, probably to an annoying point, but like I'm really into personal development. I'm really into like learning about how the mind works, how things work. They've done plenty of studies about when people output their best work, and guess what? Ray? It doesn't work the way anybody thinks it does. It's not 9 to 5. There are basically very, very quickly in layman's terms, there's basically 3 windows throughout the day when people work. There's a basic kind of morning to the early afternoon. There's a mid-morning to late afternoon. And then there's like the nocturnal people, right? And the thing is, different people, and this can change throughout your life, different people work better at different times. And then, Ray, to make it even more complicated, during that kind of 8-hour, we'll just say, period, you do different types of work better during different times. So there's a time you're going to answer emails better. There's a time you're going to be more creative. There's a time you should be on Zoom. There's a time you shouldn't be doing anything. And I'm trying to figure that out myself. Like, for a quick example, I know that I write best now in the morning. By the way, 10 years ago, that wasn't the case. It would have been night. Right now, the best time for me to do my writing is in the morning. The best time to do shows like this is in the afternoon. Right? Like, I just know that. But people don't care. It's 9 to 5. The yellow pages are still relevant. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Wake up. Wake up. It's 2021.
Well, and they also say, actually, a lot of people are saying that actually now they're looking at a 4-day work week.
Yeah.
Because a lot of folks are more productive, like more people, and this is true, and because I used to do this at ESPN, I was more productive working 4 10-hour days than 5 8-hour days.
Yes.
And that's the thing is that like I would get more done.
The option should be available. All right. If you can do it, again, for me, it's can the work be done? Ray, if you could do the work in one day, I know someone who does that. I know someone who works 1 day a week. They probably work about 17 hours in 1 day. They get everything done they need to do. I'm serious. This is how they want to do it. And they have the rest of the week off. And no one complains because they bring in so much money. You know what I mean? But everyone's different with this. And I think as soon as we can break the just kind of that corporate attitude of 9 to 5 and you got to do it this way and you should be tired at the end of the day, which is complete crap.
No.
Right? Yeah.
No.
Like for those you don't know, in Europe, specifically France and Italy, they have a midday nap. They eat their big meal midday,
siestas.
and then they go ahead and take a nap, and they come back, and everybody's working. When I was in France, I was 7 o'clock. People were still working, and they were happy.
Some of the best, and this is true. And as somebody who studied, not to my own horn, studied twice in Europe, overseas during my college career.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm patting you on the head.
It's true. The most productive I was during the most productive I was when there were siestas.
Right.
I would go, and this is true. I would get up at 6 a.m. and you'd work till about 12. You'd have lunch. You'd take a nap. You'd go take your siesta, and then I'd go back to work about 3 or 4, and then I would work until about 8. And even though I was working 10 hours, that break in the middle, breaking it up like that. And then from 8 and then 8 o'clock, you go have a late dinner and you have some wine and you take it chill and you maybe go to a bar or whatever. And then by midnight, you're back in bed. And then I was happier doing that than I think I've ever been here in the States. And again, also, even at ESPN, the most productive I was, my productivity at ESPN dropped when I was working 3 days a week, 12-hour days. Then they went to 4 days a week, 10-hour days. And it was 5 days a week, 8-hour days. The most miserable I was at ESPN when I had to do Monday through Friday, the 9 to 5 grind.
Right.
I was like, please, can you put me back on the Ranger games? Please let me go back to working from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 3 nights a week, and it wouldn't do it, and it just.
Again, especially in New York,
not there anymore.
And LA, that's a power struggle. You know what I mean? Like it's the power of like owning someone. But Ray, imagine if you were offered that type of position where you can wake up, eat lunch, take a nap, go back, then have a big dinner and wine afterwards. Imagine if that was offered to you, Ray!
I might have to take
that. Play that out in your head, man. Just play it out in your head. Maybe a little inside joke happening here, but it's not. Because I am Lee.
All right, let's look at chat. Matt says that's the same conversation I had with my boss. I still have to work 5 days because of daily deadlines, but as long as I get the work done, I can use the rest of the time however I wish.
That's great. That's great. That's a good boss. That's a good boss.
Yeah, setting up daily automation, necessary work down to less than an hour. That's great, man. That's fantastic. I wish I had something like that. And Caitlin talking about fun fact. I said I'm really tired. Lee said you should be tired. Just cutting him off at the knees. Nicely done, Caitlin. There we go. Moving on now. So we're done with the geek section of things. We're moving into sports now. This is an extra long
section. Episode. That was a good 2 hour, 30-minute geek section.
That was an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. It felt like 10 minutes. That's how fun
we also have to remember we had that technical issue in the middle, so we did lose some time. We love
this show. I enjoyed it. I'm not complaining, man. This is awesome. Are you kidding? I'm having a blast right now.
I'm not complaining either. I'm just
Sounds
saying.
Like you're complaining.
I thought you were complaining.
I thought you were. I'm Batman.
I'm Batman.
Yeah, that was way better than mine.
It's okay. And as Matt says, he can do this all day.
You gotta do the thing with the. I can do this all day.
Or
just Sam. Yeah. No. Stay down. No.
Yeah. So moving into sports, actually moving into one of our favorite topics here is wrestling. This is actually a sad topic. Talking about guys getting let go and people being let go and moving on. Mickie James, of course, who is a fantastic women's wrestler, should be in the Hall of Fame. Fishy in chat says everybody stop complaining. Mark Carrano, who folks might know from some of the reality shows with WWE, I think when he was part of Tough Enough, when they brought it back a few years ago, one of the heads of talent relations, was promptly fired from WWE this week by Triple H and Stephanie McMahon as Mickie James, who unfortunately, she was let go. She's part of the many layoffs that we talked about on last week's episode. Carrano decided it would be best to send James's things back to her in a trash bag. And James, of course, quickly took to social media, feeling that this, basically saying this is indicative of how I felt I was treated here on my second turn with WWE. And it really, for someone who is as accomplished as Mickie James is, it did really feel like, I think for a lot of fans of hers as well as like a slap in the face from WWE to be so unceremoniously treated after they let her go. And for them to do that to her things, not even give her a chance, probably maybe because of the pandemic, to come back and get her stuff. So definitely, I think this was a swift action from WWE, and Triple H and Stephanie immediately taking it. And honestly, Mark Carrano seemed like kind of a jerk anyway if you watched him on Tough Enough. So I'm not surprised that he would do something like this, and it just seems to be the situation was resolved, and it was just unfortunate that it happened.
Yeah, sometimes I wonder, Ray, with these things that are happening, it's kind of like social media, right? Is this new for WWE/F, or has this always been happening, but we just hear about it more now because everybody's so connected?
Right.
Again, you hear about stories from Shawn Michaels and these guys of what they did in the late 90s, early 2000s, and none of them are safe for even this podcast. So it just makes you wonder how much of this stuff is really just, we have so much more access now that we hear about it. But yeah, the saga of drama continues in professional wrestling.
Yes, and I get it. I mean, it's good to shine a light on some things. They should treat people better, especially when you're the ones who let them go. So
yeah, they're in their own little world, man. They're in their own little world over there.
Yeah, WWE is something special. But speaking of drama in sports, the Olympics might get delayed again. Mm-hmm. Another COVID outbreak is happening in Japan. Japan, who actually was one of the better ones at holding this down the first time around. It seems that they're getting their spikes now. And because of this, there's talks of, again, banning or even outright canceling now the Summer Olympics. They're talking about moving them to 2022, which would then, because people forget, it used to be that the Summer Olympics and Winter Olympics all happened in the same year, and then they realized it would probably be better to stagger it, and so you'd have every 2 years Winter Olympic, every 4 years, but basically you have an Olympic every 2 years, winter then summer, winter then summer. Right. But this might push it back to where you have summer and winter in the same year again, right. 2022. Again, showing just how COVID continues to affect our lives.
Right.
It's heartbreaking for the athletes, for sure, but considering how infamously unclean the Olympic Village typically is for athletes, and that there's not enough usually sanitation measures taken there in the Olympics anyway. For the athletes' safety, it's sad because some athletes might actually age out of being able to compete at a higher level. Some athletes are losing their prime.
Right.
But at the same time, you also want them to be as safe as possible. Lee, what are your thoughts on possibly delaying the Olympics another year?
Well, I'm all for it, and I'll tell you why. And because I think there's a massive opportunity here. So there's half of this is business, half of this is the actual athletic competition. From a business standpoint, the reason why the Olympics differ so much from regular professional sports is because the host countries don't typically make money on the Olympics. If anything, if they break even, they're lucky. Most of the time they lose money on the Olympics. The reason countries do this is because of the 20-year impact of the tourism, right? That's where they make their money. All right, so that's why it's not like, oh, just do it without fans. It's not the same, right? They need people to be there. There has to be that element. Now, the missed opportunity is this. While I am very, very understanding of athletes aging out and very understanding of that aspect of it, and while unfortunate, that's the reality of the time, all right? We have to remember, if you survive COVID, that is the gift right now, all right? The 3 million people have died, and we as a globe, continue to gloss over that 3 million people have perished because of this disease, and we don't even know the long-term impacts. But I'm going to give you a vision, Ray. You tell me what you think. And you're a pretty pessimistic person. So if I get you on this, I think I can get everybody on it, okay? Have the Summer Olympics and the Winter Olympics the same year, okay?
Right.
Have this global celebration in the summer and the winter of athletics for the first time in a long time. We will celebrate the end of the pandemic together as a world, one Olympics. All right. And then you do the Summer Olympics 2 years later, right?
Right.
Instead of 4 years later, then you're right back to the every 2 years it's summer and then winter, right? But no, postpone it. Get the fans in, Get us all healthy. By 2022, we will have a grip on this thing, or we'll all be mutated beyond belief. But we'll have a grip on this thing, okay? You can celebrate it. People can be there. Do it right. It will give actually the host city even more time to get ready for it, to put more precautions in place. I know they want to do it now. I know they spend a lot of money. Why not have a global sports celebration of the end of the pandemic? Wouldn't that be a wonderful moment to have both the Summer Olympics in the same year as the official end of the pandemic? If hopefully it's over before that, but you know what I mean? That could be such a we're moving forward as a planet moment, right? Things are coming back to normal. Because again, look, think about it, man. I've played this out in my head. Even when everyone's vaccinated, it's going to take time. We're not just going to snap back to reality. All right, It's going to take a long time. It's going to probably take, you know what? It's going to take however long the pandemic lasts, which is about a year and a half. I guarantee you, it's going to take a year and a half to come back from that, right? Fully, right? Which guess what that would time out to? The summer of 2022.
2022.
All right, I'm Lee Elias. I'm a sports guy. I'm here all week. That's it. The end of the show. I'm dropping the mouse, but not too much because I don't want to hurt it. And I'll see you next week. Bye, everybody.
I think it's a key league comeback. Okay. I think it's a good. I do think it's a good idea. I think it's fine. I'm fine with it. Again, I feel bad for the individual athletes,
I do too.
But I also
too. That's reality.
I legit think that's the right move. If you can't get, if you don't think you can get it safe in the next 3 months, delay it again.
Yeah, and,
delay it again.
Ray, on the athletes too, mess with the eligibility a little bit. If you need to, if you qualified for the 2020 Olympics, you should automatically. I'm not talking about in terms of the qualifiers, but I'm saying if you qualified as an amateur athlete, you should be able to continue to do that. It shouldn't have to affect you in that way. But again, you don't hear the dream team complaining. Right. I do feel bad for that 37-year-old athlete that's going to be 40. I really do think about that. But look, that's unfortunately that is reality. Okay, and the thing is, I have to say this. I'm not saying this lightly, but if the biggest sacrifice of the pandemic was that someone aged out of the Olympics, I understand the gravity of that, but hey, if you survive the pandemic, that's great.
It's still a win.
That's still a win.
So, actually, interesting enough, we have a second Olympic story this week. This was a big deal, and it's kind of, talk about the pot calling the kettle black with the IOC. Basically imagine a body of Rob Manfreds, the absolute worst people in the world. Is the International Olympic Committee. They never know what's the best thing. They always make the wrong decision when it comes to sports.
Consistently corrupt too.
Yes, and exactly. They are some of the most corrupt people typically in the sports world. They have announced they are doing a ban on the Tokyo Olympics. They will enforce a ban on protesting. And if an athlete does any sort of form of protest, whether on their uniform or on a podium or however, that they will strip their eligibility and or strip them of medals and have them removed and all this other stuff. And considering the Olympics historically has been one of the biggest stages for protests, not just from athletes, but just in general. And considering we're in a world where having your voice heard right now is probably one of the biggest things and one of the most important things for a lot of these people. This seems to be a bonehead move of all bonehead moves, and you've got and honestly, a lot of the countries, including of course the U.S. team and I think the Canadian team, the German team, have all come out supporting their athletes, saying if our athletes want to protest, we will support them. And that's, it's just one of those things where, again, the IOC, one of the worst governing bodies of sports in the world, the absolute scummiest of scummy people, of course, making a stupid move, and hopefully this gets overturned or reversed in some way.
What I think is important to remember about that, Ray, is that governing body is consists of people from multiple countries around the world. And I think that it goes to show you, and again, I'm not trying to beat my chest here as an American, but it goes to show you we have a lot of freedoms in this country that we take for granted. And that's a lot of mentality of other countries around the world whose governments are extremely strict about things like this. You cannot go to Cuba, North Korea, and several other countries, most likely Russia, and just protest. I think you're seeing echoes of that in this decision. And it's another thing about, obviously it's not just limited to America. It's just part of American beliefs is you can protest and no one will really stop you, even if they try. And people have tried. Ray, quick side note. I got to shout this out. I just got a text from my buddy Tom Moldenhauer, who ironically enough was at the South Korean Olympics a few years ago. And I'm going to show this on the screen and describe it. He just sent me this text. He says, 3 nerds, and it's his face really big watching us on his gigantic TV on Twitch. So Tom Moldenhauer, thanks for sending that. I love the power of live podcasting. We got people texting us. He says he sees me giggling, and there's a delay.
That's
so
awesome.
Whatever that happened, Tom, that's a shout out to you.
Fantastic.
Tom served in the U.S. Still does serve in the U.S. Air Force. He's a really good friend of mine, an incredible human being. And Tom, thanks for sending that. That made me feel good.
That is fantastic. Thank you very much, Tom. Moving on now to baseball. Actually, we got Squirtle Squads in the chat. Speaking of speaking of terrible people in sports, he's an Astros fan. Nobody. Sorry, not the fans themselves. The Astros are terrible. I might have said that wrong.
I want to ask Squirtle Squads, and this is an honest question, man. I'm not trying to call you out. You know your team cheated. Do you justify it? Do you move past it? Do you accept it? I need to hear this from an Astros fan because that was of no fault of the fans. But we know you cheated. So I got to know what an Astros fan feels about that. Hopefully you have a good answer. We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll see what he says. Just want to mention also there were a couple of COVID delays actually in sports this week. There was one in hockey. There was also another one in baseball as this is going to happen. I guess not a lot of big news in baseball on the baseball front. One of the most interesting things was Jay Bruce of the Yankees decided to retire in the middle of the season. I
quit.
So
I quit.
20 games in, and he's like, you know what? I
suck at this.
Yeah, I'm not good anymore. He was, and not to really make fun of him, not to really to pour salt in the wound. He was kind of embarrassing himself out there. There was clearly a drop from the last. He had been declining. He's in his mid-30s, declining the last few years of his career, but he was hitting a .110 with 1 home run. The Yankees tried to turn him into a first baseman. This is a guy who was a career outfielder. He is not a first baseman, but he got himself a nice last decent payday from the Yankees. And again, 319 career home runs, not a bad career. Jay Bruce, a couple-time All-Star. Again, probably spent most of his time best known for his career with the Reds. Had a cup of coffee with the Mets and the Phillies. And, of course, now the Yankees, amongst other teams, as he hangs up the cleats. Lee, how do you feel about mid-season retirement?
I'll quote a few movies here, Ray, but it's tough as an athlete. I'll tell you this, there's that great kind of quote from Moneyball of sometimes they tell you, sometimes they don't, but at some point you're done. You know what I mean? We all stop. Everybody stops. Nobody gets to play forever. And I was always told that you want to walk away before you get to this point, right? You don't want to go too long. But, man, I love hockey, and it's like, you know this personally. I've been dealing with a lot of injuries lately just from getting older. And I'm starting to hear from people, you should stop. You should stop. But gosh darn it, Ray, I'm having a hard time doing that. And, it's like, luckily I have healed from most of those, and my physical therapist, who you teased me about before, has actually got me playing with no pain again, which is really nice. So I got a few more years, baby. But I have had to think about this lately, and it's like, when it's not fun anymore, and that's what I think happened here. When it's not fun anymore, you have to stop, right? Because if you keep playing after that, it becomes a monster. It really does. And I think that's what happened. It's just not fun for him anymore. And not being fun can come from a lot of pain. It can come from doing it too long. It can come from a lot of different things. But I think that's probably what happened. He's not enjoying it. And, if that's the case, God bless him for making the decision. That's gutsy to do it mid-season. Really gutsy. But hopefully he's not remembered for that moment.
Oh, I highly, highly doubt it. That is not going to be how many of us remember Jay Bruce, for sure.
Now, Ray,
it was interesting.
You did say there wasn't a lot of big baseball news this week, but my man Ray Carcillo here threw a no-hitter, perfect game in MLB The Show with an amazing call. You can go check that out on his TikTok right now. All right, yes. 19 batters struck out. Okay. 27 up, 27 down. Ray Carcillo with the no-hitter in MLB The Show. Legendary, sir.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it
Legendary.
We've got the hot words there that you can go check it out on TikTok after the show, or you can check it out right now while you're watching the show. It's all there for sure. So that is
humble too. Look at this, humble guy.
Yeah. So I wasn't promoting it, but I mean now that you mentioned it,
promoting it, dude. Come on, man.
We are back to baseball on TikTok, and of course during the week on my Twitch streams. So, and of course, speaking of promotions, don't forget we have T-shirts for sale now. Go to the link that Lee just dropped into the chat, or to our Facebook group that Lee is sporting. Lee is modeling a next level T-shirt with the Geeks Who Like Sports logo on.
Yeah. No, all I got a vision was of me on Tom Moldenhauer's gigantic TV doing that little sway thing I just did. So that's funny.
I'm sure Tom enjoyed it. Yeah. So Tom is thrilled that you did that on his giant
screen. He's changed the channel
now. Yeah, he's like, gotta get this off. Gotta go. What video games are being played on Twitch right now?
I'm watching Call of Duty now. Thanks, bud.
Yeah. So So that was interesting. So speaking of retirements, also another big retirement news: Alex Smith officially retires from the NFL this week. Of course, after a long, harrowing comeback after having his leg absolutely decimated, Alex Smith pulls off. He got the comeback player of the year. And we've said it before on the show that he didn't look quite right while playing, but he played pretty dang good for Washington. And he has nothing left to prove to anybody. And I think he came to that realization as well, that and he has also hung up the cleats this week. And we tip our hat to you, Alex Smith, a guy who was very, very underappreciated in his career wherever he went.
It's true. And, here's the thing. Speaking about guys retiring, I mean, there's a guy that got his swan song. Wow, that's my tongue twister for the day. And he quietly rode off into the sunset. So there's the other side of it, right, Ray, of a perfect exit. And again, we all knew this. He just had to prove to himself that well, actually, he didn't really have to do this, but he proved to himself that, hey, I could still do this. And again, he doesn't need to risk his life anymore, which he does do every time he plays football. Let's just be honest about it. And that's the swan song into the sunset retirement. Well done. Great career. Unbelievable comeback story. Unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely terrific. Couple other things from football. The Ravens and Chiefs made a blockbuster trade ahead of the draft. The Ravens send one of their best offensive tackles to the Chiefs, which we know that the Chiefs need to help that offensive line, along with 2 draft picks. In exchange, the Ravens get 4 draft picks, including a second round. I think it was a second, a third, a fourth, and a sixth. And I think going back to Kansas City was the offensive tackle and a third and a fifth rounder. So the Ravens moving up in the draft, that's a big trade there. Interesting to see what's going to happen. We're a week away. Lee, the draft is next week, Lee. The NFL draft is next week. The Eagles have made moves. The Giants are staying pat at 11, at least for the moment. We'll have a full draft breakdown. Well, we'll have at least a first round breakdown next week, but stay tuned for that. But yeah, we're a week away from the draft, so this is a big trade, getting us ready, getting us warmed up for that next week.
For those of you listening to the podcast, Ray just got visibly excited and warmed up by realizing that the draft was a week away. He perked up there, and that's my take on that segment.
Yeah. One more thing happened this week in the NFL, some rule changes.
Yeah, we do have to talk about this. This is a little weird.
Yeah. Tom Brady freaked out on social media over the fact that there's now a wider range of numbers that defensive players can wear as well as offensive players. I personally don't see the big deal, but I guess if you're the best in the game and you have a problem with it, I guess it's something you look into.
I understand his problem. I understand why he doesn't like it. I'm not going to say I agree with him, but I understand why he doesn't like it.
I get it, but to me it seems to be nitpicky. I think if a guy wants to wear a different number, I really don't care.
Well, it's about the positional numbers, right? Because positional players typically have a certain number on their back or a certain range. And the thing is, I think that the reason why he's getting so much crap, and there's kind of a two-sided thing to this, but it shows you the level of detail that he sees the game with. That's a problem for him, right? So what he's saying is that's going to make it harder for me, basically, right? And it's going to make it harder for defensive assignments and offensive assignments as well, because that's the level of detail they see the game at. Now, with that said, I don't think that a lot of players are going to take this up, and I think there's going to be a lot of coaches that say don't do that.
Right.
Or then there's coaches like Belichick that'll use it to his advantage. Hey, listen, you're going to wear a 12 today, but I'm not a quarterback. Yeah. Doesn't matter. You're 12, you're a linebacker, deal with it.
Yeah, exactly.
So for those of you who don't know, as I said, positional players in football typically all have the same similar number.
A certain range.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of guys will be in the 50s. You know what position they play. So when you're on the field and you're playing QB, or like I said, you have a defensive assignment. That's one of the ways that you can identify a player on the field. So it's one of those things of, for a guy like Tom Brady, it's a problem. I'm sure the league goes, you're going to be gone in 3 years. We don't really care what you think. And that, everybody else will just adapt. That's probably how that's going to work out.
Probably. A couple other rules. Replay officials will now be able to suggest to the official on the field what they think if the call should be overturned or not. They can't make a call, but they can now suggest, being like, hey, listen, from what we're seeing, which is a big deal because it used to be left up completely to the official on the field's discretion. Now that you have, and we know this, like when you can talk something through with somebody, you can usually come to a better conclusion, usually more quickly than if you're doing it on your own. Hopefully this speeds up the replay process and also leads to better calls on the field. So I'm all for this rule.
I was just going to say, it has to speed it up. If it elongates it, then what's the point? But it has to speed it up.
If the two of them are into the hood and it's still just arguing back and forth, then it's a problem.
It's got to speed it up. And most of the time, the replay officials are almost always correct because they have the ability to do that. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're right there, they see all the video feeds.
Exactly.
And then finally, one other interesting one. This was the worst year in football for onside kick recovery. So one way the league is trying to make it better is that, so it used to be, typically, when an onside kick, you'd have one man back just in case a team decided to kick off, and then 10 guys lining up for the onside kick. The league has now mandated it that 2 guys must stay back on the onside kick, only allowing 9 guys to line up. They hope that this numbers advantage may lead to a few more onside kicks being recovered this year. The onside kick has always been a bit of a Hail Mary kind of play anyway. Unless you're the Cowboys against the Falcons. But it seems to me that, I'm all for trying to make this play a bit more competitive. The Eagles put out, actually, suggested a 4th down kind of play from the 25, like a 4th and 15. If you can convert it, you can keep the ball. The league seems to have shelved it for now. They haven't outright stricken it down, but it's going to be at least delayed another year. But the Eagles, I actually like that idea. I'm intrigued by that idea. A chance to either do an onside kick or you get one play from your own 25 to try to hold on to the ball. And if you can't, then it goes right back to the other team anyway. So
it's interesting. Look, I applaud the NFL for evolving their game. There's other leagues that don't do that hardly at all. Mm-hmm. The other thing, too, is that, they'll never explore this, but I always said, why not reduce the 10-yard distance on an onside kick to 5? That would change everything about that play. Yes. I do understand why they don't do that, okay? I probably would increase injuries, too, but if you really want to increase onside kick conversions, that's one way to do it. But I don't think they necessarily want to convert on them that much more. They just want the opportunity to be there. And good on the NFL for getting a little better with their rule changes recently. These are not hindering the game; they're enhancing the game. And quick side note, like when the XFL comes back, I'm looking forward to see what Dwayne Johnson and that league does to kind of push the gamut of football rules, because I think there's a lot to be learned there.
Yeah, no, it should be fun. Should be interesting. Looking forward to it as well. Briefly want to mention a couple of new shows on TV coming up, but specifically one that I think is interesting. At least one episode I saw Chad Ochocinco talking in the commercial. We talked about it last year, Dark Side of the Ring, which is one of my favorite wrestling shows. It really dives deep behind the scenes in some of wrestling's biggest tragedies, triumphs, and tribulations. But that's returning Thursday, May 6th, a new time, a new date. The week after that, it'll have a new show following it called The Dark Side of Football, debuting on May 13th. Similarly, some real dark things, some dark stories we're going to be talking about in football. Might have the curtain pulled back finally on some things the league has done over the years. I'm super curious about this show. Super excited for it because I know how good Dark Side of the Ring was, or is, I should say, as they move into their 3rd season. Dark Side of Football, May 13th. Definitely going to be talking about it here. Lee, are you excited for this show?
Ooh, I go back and forth on this. The reason why Dark Side of the Ring works is that no one's denying the stories. right? They
Right.
happened. You know they happened, and like, look, here's the investigative report. I don't see the NFL quietly letting anything bad come out. You know, God help us if there's a concussion episode or a CTE episode. I mean, the league's like, look, man, we moved on from that, and the world's like, no, you haven't, but the league thinks they have. And then, you know, like I don't. There's other things too. Like, do I want to see an episode about how Donovan McNabb and the TO thing ruined our Super Bowl chances? And are they going to go into Deflategate? Are they going to go into cheating scandals? You don't want to hurt the game. Right?
Right.
Like Dark Side of the Ring didn't hurt wrestling. Like with Chris Benoit, you know, that almost gave closure, if I dare to say it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if a Dark Side of football can do that. On the adverse, Ray, I miss the inspirational football films. I miss that, you know, with the great music and the stories where Harry Callis used to narrate. I want to feel good about sports. I don't want more drama in my sports. There's already plenty. All right, we're never like you said. I'm not saying this in a bad way. We're not going to be able to remove politics from sports moving forward. That's kind of here to stay. It might cool off a bit. I don't need more drama. So my final thought is, depending on how it's done, depending on how it's received, and depending on what it does from there, maybe. Okay. Again, a lot of this is also being born from The Last Dance. All right, which was the greatest sports documentary I've ever seen, ever. I'm not denying it was the greatest sports documentary I have ever seen, in a series format, right? I want more of that. I want way more of that. So we'll see.
Yeah, I wonder if it is a bit of an answer or response to something like The Last Dance. So it's going to be.
It's just the dark side of football. Like, thanks, great.
Yeah.
You know, what about the light side of football? Where's the Jedi side of this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, we will see. We will see how it goes, but I guess there isn't much of a light side, or at least light sides don't get ratings.
We'll see. Like I'm not against. I want to say I'm not against it. I'm just curious to see how it's received.
Yeah, now that is fair. Moving on from football now to hockey, something that's been very well received, of course, is the record that was broken this week by Patrick Marleau.
Massive record.
He now is the all-time leader in games played in the NHL. Which is amazing. Absolutely unbelievable. Congrats to him doing it back again in San Jose. Of course, he had a cup of coffee with the Leafs and the Penguins as well, but everyone knows him as a Shark. And, it's a tremendous record. He's on the cusp of 1,200 career points. He'd be only the 50th man in NHL history to hit that plateau. And he did it against his buddy, I think he did it against his buddy Joe Thornton when he broke the record. If I remember correctly, it might be wrong. It might not be actually.
I think they tied the record against Toronto, but I don't remember specifically. But it happened.
I don't even know actually if it would, because Toronto wouldn't have played San Jose,
right?
With the way things going right now. So I can't remember. Joe Thornton was involved in the story somehow. I don't know if it was just he made a very nice comment.
The Leafs all sent him a message, and you're right.
That's what it was. The Leafs.
I'm embarrassed.
I think
the Leafs that statement, but
the Leafs sent him. The Leafs sent him a message of some sort, which is very. Yeah. So it's a big deal there for Patrick Marleau.
Well, it's massive. And look, here's the deal. You know, just to break it down a little bit, because this is one of those records that can easily be kind of just, oh, that's nice. Most games played in the NHL. Anytime, first of all, you're going past somebody named Howe or Gretzky or Messier or Yager, extremely elite company there. The other thing, too, is this. Ray and I talked about this off the air, but I got to bring it up here. You think about the toll the NHL takes on a human body, right? We talk about football and the toll it takes on the human body. This guy's played an amazing amount of hockey, and somehow his genealogy allowed him to survive that and continue to play today. That, in terms of human performance, is unbelievable. So anytime someone breaks this record, it should not be swept under the rug. And the only shame of it is they didn't have a full building when he did it.
Yeah. No, I think that's well put. I think it's true. And he's 3 points away from 1,200. He's got 10 games left to play. I imagine he's probably retiring at the end of this year. At least that's what the reports are saying. So I hope he gets. I hope he gets 3 more points in these last 10 games to hit that 1,200 point plateau. But if not, he has this record, and I think it's a record that's going to stand for a very, very long time. for him. And speaking of hockey, just a couple other things out there. We have our first 2 teams that have clinched playoff berths. Both the Golden Knights and the Avalanche are officially in the tournament now. They are the first 2 teams to clinch. The Rangers remain 6 points back of Boston after Boston finally lost. Boston was on a 6-game winning streak because, of course, they were after they made those trades. But they finally lost to Buffalo.
Lingering.
Yeah, and but the Rangers still hanging around. 8 games left for the Rangers, 2 against Buffalo, 2 against the Islanders, 2 against Washington, and then 2 against Boston. Boston, though, 2 games in hand. Philly and the Rangers just had a 2-game series as well. They split. No offensively, I believe that's probably the nail in the coffin for the Flyers.
They were done a week and a half ago. What are you talking about? The nail in the coffin for the Flyers is when they lost the 2 games against Boston 2 weeks ago. That was the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Then there was just the hopers, and now they're all with me in reality.
Yes, exactly. I think everybody else has come on board now after splitting with the Rangers. That is the Flyers are done. The Rangers still hanging around again, 6 points back with
the Rangers are
with
alive.
8 to play, and specifically because they have 2 against Boston.
Right.
Those 2 games could, as long as, again, we've said this before, if the Rangers are within 4 points with those 2 games start, then those 2 games are huge. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the thing with the Rangers that bugs me is, imagine if they didn't have the start to the season they had with all the inner locker room problems and the Panarin problem. This would not be a 6-point battle. You'd probably be right there tied with Boston. So I dare I say it, maybe I'm rooting for the Rangers a little bit here. I'm kind of hoping that they pull off some New York magic. That would be pretty cool. Look, at minimum, Ray, as much as this would probably hurt you, at minimum, I'm really hoping those last 2 games are for the playoffs. That would be really cool.
Yeah, no, you hope those 2 games mean something, right? You hope the Rangers don't have a letdown here. Again, we got 2 games against Buffalo. Those should be 4 points for us.
Right.
And then you hope that Boston can slip a little bit and you can make up some ground here. But again, the Islanders have been playing us tough. They've kind of had our number this year.
Right.
And then 2 tough games against Washington. Even though we've kind of had Washington's number. Obviously, Washington is probably the best team in the East right now.
Yeah, but there's no pressure on them, too. So that's another thing, too. So we'll see what happens. Look, you're still alive. There's meaningful hockey to be played at Madison Square Garden, and that's awesome. That's great. Anytime towards the end of the season. Even though we're in April, and this is a weird year, but yes.
We now look at chat. Matt talks about how the Canucks did come back to play from COVID, which is a big deal. They beat the Leafs twice, which was shocking. And then Matt, typical Canucks fashion, you got shut out by the Senators immediately after that.
Wow.
Yeah. So probably all that adrenaline that you wasted on the Leafs, and then you kind of came back down to earth. It's going to be interesting to see how they finish their season out.
There's no way they maintain it. There's just the COVID's going to take a toll. You can't play that many games and survive in the league. It's not possible.
Right.
I'll put it this way: if they do, they earned it, but it's just not possible.
Yeah, and Matt says he thinks the Rangers earned a playoff spot. Well, we'll hopefully we get
be a great
if we get enough points, we'll earn it.
I'll tell you this, man: if the Rangers get in, they're a dark horse and a half, because they're pissed and they're ready to win. And I'll tell you what, Panarin is clearly made for New York City.
Yes,
you know what I mean. Like that's a team that if they get in, they got a purpose, they got a belief.
You know what? Since Quinn finally mixed up the lines, they put Lafreniere with Zibanejad and Kreider, and all of those guys are performing better now. Yeah. Panarin is on another line with I think Strome and Buchnevich. Those guys are all performing now. They seem to have finally clicked. We've got 2 legit scoring lines. Shesterkin is playing out of his mind. He's living up to his potential.
Yeah, they're believing.
Matt brings up the point.
They believe.
Yeah, and Matt brought up the point. Boston did drop a game to Buffalo. That's 1 game. They were due to lose, though. Buffalo has been playing better. Boston had won 6 in a row. They were due to lose. So we'll see what happens next, please.
That's another thing. Buffalo's going to start beating teams now because they got nothing to worry about anymore. That's what happens.
Right.
This
They're
time.
going to play spoiler.
We said Buffalo will screw someone out of the playoffs. They've already screwed the Flyers. We'll see who they screw next.
It could be the Rangers. Rangers
who
and Buffalo
is the
tomorrow
proverbial night. Folding table for Buffalo right now? Ray, is it going to be Boston or New York? Who will they jump on first?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, but it's a fun rush to the finish. Speaking of teams on winning streaks, really quickly going to touch on basketball. My Knicks have the longest winning streak in basketball, 8 in a row. They've climbed back to the 4 seed. Look, I'm not saying we're going to get any higher than that, but goodness, again, we've mentioned it before, it would be great if the Knicks could host a first-round matchup at Madison Square Garden. It'd be good for basketball. Obviously, be good for the fan base. But the Knicks, right now, the hottest team in basketball as they host the Raptors
last
this
time
afternoon.
you said that? When is the last time you said that? 1999.
I was going to say it's probably been 20 years.
Maybe 2009, maybe. They were pretty good back in 2009 for a bit.
There was a couple. Yeah, there was a couple of years there. I think the first year they got Melo when Carmelo came over for that first year there. But the Knicks right now on a roll, beating everybody, and again doing it with defense mostly. They've had some good scoring though off the bench, and obviously Julius Randle is having a resurgence. Also wanted to bring this up, Lee, with your 76ers. This was an interesting story. Chauncey Billups, Detroit Pistons, Denver Nuggets, has been around calling out Allen Iverson for being like, if he's in the Hall of Fame, why ain't I? Looking at the numbers, it's because you're not as good a player as
well, you took the words right out of my mouth there, right?
Yeah. So I will say this. Yeah. Billups' argument is that he has a ring and AI doesn't.
Oh, that's such not a Hall of Fame argument.
No, it's not.
It's not a Hall of Fame argument.
He was Finals MVP of that one Finals that he won with the Pistons, but against the Lakers. But
God, man, I gotta say it. The I over we mentality in basketball sometimes boggles my mind.
Yeah,
it boggles my mind. By that logic, Marino shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame.
Right.
I just don't know. Exactly. It boggles my mind.
Trent Dilfer should be in the Hall of Fame, and Dan Marino
watched
should.
Allen Iverson die for Philadelphia every night of his career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude. It's
he led the league in scoring 4 times. Chauncey Billups never led the league in anything.
It's not a good argument, and
no.
If anything, it sounds a little foolish. If you have to compare yourself to someone, that's probably not good. There's a great quote. Caitlin Reese, our producer, loves this quote. If you're good, you'll tell everybody. If you're great, they'll tell you.
There you go. That is a great quote. So.
Ray, you're great.
Oh, thanks, Lee.
You're welcome, buddy.
You're great too.
I know. No, I mean thanks. That's what I meant to say. I'm just kidding. I know. The Han Solo thing doesn't work there. What the hell?
You know who thinks he's great?
I do, and I'm gonna let you transition this one because this is gonna piss us both off. This topic.
Yes, and as by the way, Matt in chat says we're both great. Thank you, buddy.
Matt, you're great.
Yeah, you're great too, Matt. Everybody's great. Everybody who's watching this live, you're great, and everybody who's listening to this after the fact, you're also great.
That brought us down to the Frosted Flakes level.
Who will also take as a sponsor?
Yes.
Jake Paul thinks he's great. Thinks he's something special. He had a quote-unquote boxing match with Ben Askren. Askren, a former MMA fighter, now 36, retired for several years. Came out immediately afterwards and said, I took this for... Chat quit bug there. He said, I took this for $500,000 guaranteed. You really think that Ben Askren... had any other reason to do this fight, a guy who's an MMA fight, not a boxer, than simply for the fact he said, he's like, I'm sorry, America, because now you have to deal with Jake Paul more and you have to listen to him, but I'm going to go home and have some pizza in my hotel room, and then I'm going to go home to my wife and kids tomorrow, $500,000 richer. That's basically what he said. I'm paraphrasing. That's basically what he said after the fight. You think this is a real boxing match? You think this is legitimate? Or you think this is just another YouTube jackass trying to prolong his 15 minutes of fame? And look, Paul had some form. Not going to deny him that. Hit him hard, knocked him down, made him all woozy. But Askren, as soon as he got knocked down once, was happy to be like, yeah, I'm done. Throw in the towel. Don't care. Don't care.
Ray and I hate the Paul brothers, in fact, for basically ruining social media for the rest of us. But we try not to talk about them. There was actually contention between Ray and I this week of should we even talk about this. And the reason I wanted to add it, a few reasons. One is that for the joke of a matchup that this was, that Ben Askren shows up, takes off his robes. He's got a muffin top hanging out the top of his trunks. He looks completely out of shape. It reminded me of the movie The Great White Hype. I don't know if you've ever seen that, Ray, where this guy challenges the world heavyweight to a championship match, and the heavyweight comes out just severely overweight because he's not taking the guy seriously. And then it was over in the first round. So this is what I'm going to say to Paul. If you're a good boxer, then go box for real. And stop doing this crap. All right. Yeah. Dana Young or whatever, Dana, the guy from UFC, came out suing him.
Dana White.
Dana White, sorry. He's suing him. He's saying, stop going on Triller. Stop doing these fake matches. If you want to fight, fight. And I think that's where we're at with these guys. Get a real fight.
Right.
And then we can, like, maybe talk about you again as an actual boxer. Because you know what, man? You look like a real boxer. I'll give you that. But go fight for real. Stop fighting aged athletes. Go join the circuit, pay your dues like everybody else has to. No shortcuts for either of you. You know, his brother wants to fight Mayweather. They keep saying that's on. I don't believe that for a second.
No, not at all.
All right. I just can't stand the way these guys have treated their fame. You know, it's the me, money, me attitude. And I just think it adds nothing to society. And I think it's actually a detriment. It's everything that's wrong with social media. They know that. And if if they heard us talking, all they say is, "Well, you guys are two small guys, man. Big show, got $1 million. You guys are nobodies." And it's just like, I know that. I don't care. That's not why we do our show.
Yeah.
So anyway, we had to mention it because it was a joke. A 24-year-old beating a 36-year-old. Look, I'm telling you right now, the people that work for me that are that age could probably beat me up. I'm not young anymore, you know. So whatever, man. You want to celebrate that and go jump up and down and money.
I mean, you got your payday. Yeah, you got your payday. Congrats. You know, I mean, you knocked out Nate Robinson, a former basketball player.
A lot of hockey
who was
players
also
want to fight this guy, too. A lot of hockey players want to fight Paul. They do.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing is then he'd have to actually, he might have to actually fight.
I think
and then it would be
his ass,
something
to be honest
interesting.
with you.
Yeah. So we've said enough on that subject. Screw the Paul brothers.
Yeah. Big time.
Absolutely the worst dregs of humanity that has to offer.
Always have.
Yeah, and as Matt says in chat, it's all just a publicity stunt, cash grab, like we said. It's not legit, and no actual boxers are interested. Yeah, we're moving on. You know what else people seem not to be interested in? The European Super League. This was a really fascinating story for about 4 days. It sounded like the six of the England's biggest clubs, 3 from Italy, 3 from Spain, were going to do a 12-team Super League that was going to play once a week.
Right.
And as more came out, you find out why this was, that it was going to be a lot of the rich get richer, right? Because these massive teams, these teams that are already the richest teams in the sport of football, or soccer, as we say here in the States, which, by the way, is not wrong. I already know Matt's grinding his teeth probably over in England, but it's not wrong. There's a reason why we call it soccer, and it comes all the way back from the origins of the sport, but that's not neither here nor there. Basically, the richest teams, it was a way for them to make more money, to stay rich, to get richer, and to continue to have a stranglehold on the sport. It'd be like the Yankees finding a way to get $200 million a year to buy up all the free agents and just pulling it out of nowhere for playing basically scrimmage games against other teams from around the world or whatever. But yeah, it was a big deal. It seems like, though, that after the blowback as the fans, commentators, massive blowback, it sounds like teams are pulling out left and right. It sounds like the league will not happen at this point. I don't know if that's official, but again, teams are officially pulling out now as this is going on, and it's.
People have stepped down from this, right? People people have stepped down from teams because of this. This has rocked the football world in Europe.
Yes, it has absolutely decimated it, and it just it seems like it seems like it's not going to happen. But I also get it. There's also been a blowback because a lot of these teams are owned by Americans. American groups, hedge funds, things like that have come in and bought up huge chunks, controlling factors of these teams, and they're starting to run it more like a business and then a sport. And you get into that an interesting discussion now of, these guys want to make money. They are treating it like a business, but then of course there's also the purity and passion that is clearly felt by a lot of people across Europe for, of course, the sport of football. It's the most popular sport in the world. And I don't necessarily feel bad about these guys wanting, I'm as angry as they are about these guys wanting to make money. Again, it is a business. But I think them going the way they're doing it, I think, is what's the bigger problem. Lee, what are your thoughts?
It's interesting because, on paper alone, the idea of seeing kind of these super teams play each other is not a horrible thing to see. right? It's like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
The best teams are going to play each other, but that's also what the Champions League is for, right? Then you start taking the layers off and you bring in the corporate greed and you bring in the real reason behind it. You have to remember that, especially England, is a relegation level sport. So, if the rich teams get richer, that's a monopoly. Nobody's ever going to get and compete with the top 6 teams in the league at that point, ever. And that's a problem, right?
Yeah.
Adversely, and funny enough, Ray, on another page I posted this week that there was a talk because of this about what if the NHL relegated teams to the AHL if they lost. And of course, that would never work at all, just logistically and business-wise.
Right.
People were losing their mind on this post of like, that could never happen. This is a horrible idea. Who's going to it's funny. It shows you the fandom, but there's two sides to this. Shame on the owners for pursuing this, thinking that they were larger than their sport, but also nod to the owners for seeing their mistake and not doing what the rich typically do and doing it anyway. All right. I do admire that a lot of these clubs have listened to their fan base. They've listened to the team and they've said that, you know what, this is wrong. This is wrong. We need to stay in the Premier League and just do what we do and keep the integrity of the sport, as Matt says in chat, the integrity of the clubs, the integrity of the sport. So it was a very contentious 3 or 4 days for that league. Again, on paper, wasn't against it, but it is not a good idea. In fact, look, man, announcers were putting their jobs on the line. I mean, just coming out like live on television saying this is wrong. This is wrong. I mean, I've never seen announcers do that. They could be fired for that in a heartbeat. So the fans actually, I shouldn't say made the change, but the fans held the integrity here. And it's a good gut check moment for the powers that be, the billionaires in football. That you don't own the sport. You own a team. You don't own the sport. Fans own the sport. That's the truth. And that it's that working together that makes the sport so great. Something that I think American sports have actually championed during the pandemic.
Yeah. No, for sure. I do think that there are some teams in the U.S. that could probably be reminded of this.
What, Cowboys? What? What happened there? I just said something. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, no, but it's going to be. This was good. This was good for soccer. This is good that they reversed it. They went back again. That it seems to be coming undone at the seams, and that people spoke out against it, and rightfully so. So I mean, and actually, funny, speaking about the relegation, I briefly want to mention I shared a TikTok with Lee earlier in the week that was hysterical about how in FIFA the worst team in the relegation league, the worst relegated team in England,
the worst team in England, period.
The worst team in England is the most popular team in FIFA because they sponsor Burger King. Burger King sponsors the worst team in England. And because of that, they then did promotions to promote the team in FIFA. So it's now become the most popular team in FIFA for online for EA Sports to the point where it's to the point where like people are trading for getting Messi and like all this other stuff like Ronaldo, like all the best players in the world. And now so where most players when they're playing, Burger King is constantly on their screen, constantly promoting it in clips on FIFA whenever they do their YouTubes and their TikToks and all this other stuff. And it is like Lee said, is the most brilliant viral marketing.
Who doesn't want a free Whopper?
Exactly.
I would take
exactly.
Look, you sending me that TikTok made me want a Whopper. So it totally worked. It was a great 2-year plan of just getting their logo on the jersey and then incentivizing players of play as this team. We'll give you a free Whopper. And they did it. It's the most popular team. And the video is great because it starts out with like Messi on the team. It goes like, you might be confused. I'm very confused. Why is he on that team? But brilliant. I love marketing like that, creative marketing like that.
Yeah, brilliant marketing by Burger King. That does it for the sports section. Now that brings us into our mashup of the week. Yes. So this is a fun one. Of course, we talked about Mortal Kombat before the break.
Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm done. I had to do that. Sorry. Come on, man. Mortal Kombat.
Yes, the question is this week is what two athletes should fight each other in Mortal
Kombat! So you can't not do it, Ray. Just one time, give me a good one. You're a voice actor. Come on, I'm challenging you now.
Mortal Kombat!
Yeah, see, I know you did it right because your limiter came on.
So there we go. But yeah, so my pick for this is Tom Brady versus Eli Manning.
In the worst Mortal Kombat match in history. Can you imagine those guys trying to walk across your screen?
Yeah, at this point, yeah. But you know, Tom still wants a piece of Eli, and Eli is always happy to rub it in his face after what happened in those two Super Bowls.
We're going to have fun here, and I'm going to put us both on the spot because the fatalities here are hilarious, right? Yeah. So the fatality for Brady is he puts on his 7 rings and beats him to death, right? But the fatality for Eli is that when Brady's doing that sway thing of finish him, Eli catches his head with his helmet and breaks his neck down on the ground twice. Twice for good measure.
Yeah, no, I think I like those. I like those fatalities
Finish
for sure.
him.
I definitely was thinking something about that. Like, or rips
Eli
his head
goes,
off, and
"I
then
did."
He just chucks it up, and and Tyree down the field catches it with his helmet. Yeah,
that's a good one, man.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think those two would be fun in Mortal Kombat for sure. Just because of their rivalry that has happened over the years. Lee, what are your picks?
You know, Ray, I went through this in my head, and it's funny because during the episode, I'm going to take a creator's liberty here, and I'm going to take it out of the athletes, and I started thinking about what if commissioners had to fight each other in Mortal Kombat, right? Because then it becomes really. I mean, so Silver's out right away, just too scrawny, right? Mm-hmm. And then it's funny because I think about Goodell. Versus Manfred versus Bettman, and I think that the way that ends is that Goodell and Bettman come together to kill Manfred. Yeah. Right, and the fatality is they just beat him to death, and then there's a replay to see if it was fair, and it doesn't get overturned. Mm-hmm. That's the fatality. Whoops. Dun 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 dun. Wow. No, I mean, look, there's a few. I mean, like you got the heavyweights of the past in the NHL, the fighters like Bob Probert. Stu Grimson. I mean, you could do a lot of those. That would just be a good fight. But this is kind of a little bit of a weird one, but I'd like to see Lawrence Taylor versus Brian Urlacher for some reason.
That would be a good one.
That would be a good battle of the wits, right?
Yeah.
You had to pick 2 of those. And then, I mean, with baseball's tough. I mean, because like when I think of baseball, I just think of guys I don't like. Like, I'd like to see John Rocker just get beat up by anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like John Rocker versus Mets fans, period.
Yeah.
Just see what 2 fan bases would you like to see that? Matt Cavaliers is Brad Marchand versus Tom Wilson's
So who would win? We'll say, okay, this is one of those fun things. It's like, would you want, like, what would win? Like one horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses.
Right.
What would win, like a 10-foot John Rocker or like 100 1-foot Met fans?
I don't like John Rocker, so I'm just gonna give it to the Mets fans. They cheat. They cheat.
Yeah, they're dirty.
They pull off a miracle right at the end. Right at the end, they'd pull off a miracle. Yeah. When there's only a few of them left, they'd figure out a way to win. Leaning on my sports knowledge there.
Yeah, and you were saying Matt in chat mentions Brad Marchand versus Tom Wilson.
And Tom Wilson would wipe the floor with him.
Would kill him. Yeah, no, for sure.
If it was a real fight, unless Marchand.
I mean, there's a lot of good ones like Bo Jackson versus Bill Romanowski. That was a classic matchup in the early '90s. For football, basketball, Shaq versus anybody.
Zion. Jeez, that could
Shaq versus Zion Williamson. Yeah,
right.
Dikembe Mutombo maybe. Like that could be fun.
No.
Dikembe.
No.
Dikembe, he rips Shaq's head off, puts it on his finger, and then goes no.
I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, the Shaq versus a lot of people would be fun, right?
Yes.
Oh man, you did the fatality. Good thing I have this icy hot.
You need insurance from the general.
I get paid every time I say it, even when I'm dead.
Yes, but yeah, there's a lot of good ones though that you can think of for sure. I mean, baseball, same thing. Like anybody versus the Astros.
I'd like to see Tom Brady versus Bill Belichick. See you coach your way out of that one.
He doesn't power up though until he rips his sleeves off his hoodie.
We're on a Johnny Cage. We're on a Sonya Blade. we're on a Scorpion and Sub-Zero.
Oh gosh, yeah, that's some good ones. There's some good ones here. But as always, we want to know what you think. So feel free to comment below. Obviously, let us know in chat here as we're wrapping up the show. If you're listening to us live, if you're listening to us after the fact, of course, go to the Facebook group, comment, let us know. We always appreciate hearing from you guys.
Got to give a quick shout out to our producer, Caitlin, real quick, because she got to chop this episode up. We appreciate you, Caitlin. You're lovely.
Yes,
this is the third member of the team that you don't see, but we can't do the show without her. Caitlin Reese.
Yes,
go check her new portfolio out. I think it's reesmode.com. Am I correct? Am I correct, Caitlin? She put a new photo. She's an incredible photographer. For those of you who don't know, she takes pictures at the Flyers games, and she does live bands. She just put that website out. Ray, I don't know if you had a chance to check it out yet, but she is an amazing photographer. I'm not. This is not just me.
No, that I agree. I've seen a lot of her. I've seen a lot of her flyer photos. Like, I'm not denying
the work she does. So yeah, it's Rice. I would say reesmodephotography.org. REISSMODE photography.org for those of you that are listening to the podcast. If you enjoy good sports pictures and good live action band pictures, check her stuff out. She really put a lot of work into that site, and she hasn't even had her Mummers pictures up yet. For those in Philly know what I'm talking about. Check that out. Thank you, Caitlin. You're the best.
Yes, thank you, Caitlin. Even when I'm already going to apologize for the mini panic attack I had when we had some technical issues earlier.
Yeah. Save that for the dark cut of this episode, Caitlin. You can use it as bribery material whenever you want. Here to help.
Thanks, Lee. Thanks.
I'm here to help.
Yeah. So on that note, the dark side of Geek Select Sports, says Matt. Yeah.
Can you imagine that? They had 106 episodes, and then something went awry.
Yeah. And Ray lost his temper again.
Ray wins. Fatality.
Yeah. Oh, goodness. So, but yes, on that note, thank you all for listening or watching us live here on Twitch.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome stuff.
Yes, we've worked out the issues. I believe now we will not have these issues again.
But if we do, you'll be here for it.
Yes, you'll be here for it. And as always, we'll have Fishy on speed dial, our good friend Sean, of course, here in chat. Sean, special thank you. Yes, we've shouted out Caitlin. We also need to shout out Sean Fluster, who continues to help us whenever we have technical issues, because he's the only guy I know who can help me with this. But no, he's fantastic. Again, Sean is absolutely terrific at this stuff. He is absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry. Oh no, Sean's been doxxed. I'm sorry, Sean. I put your full name out there. No. No, but we really do appreciate Sean so much.
What's his social security number? I'm not writing it down. Oh.
Yeah, I don't know that. But no, Sean, of course, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah. That's the same combo as my luggage. But no, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Sean. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you, Matt, Casey, everybody who's been here. Another shout out to Casey. Happy birthday, buddy. Thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, we really, really do appreciate it. It means a lot to us. Especially when you stick with us through the technical issues. But we will be back next week with episode 107. Go buy our t-shirts. The new t-shirts are out. Lee was just modeling them again. Of course, as always, join the Instagram, the Facebook, Twitter. We are everywhere. Join me back here on Monday, Multiplayer Monday, twitch.tv/Ray Carcillo. We're probably going back to some Outriders. And then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, back to baseball. And next Friday, new game, Returnal. So stay tuned for that. And then, of course, next Saturday, back here, episode 107, Geeks Who Like Sports. Thank you all again for tuning in. For Lee, I am Ray. Have yourselves a great rest of your weekend, and we will see you all next week.
Mortal Kombat!